Yeah, man. We're live. Thursday night reality check. This is it. This is the show on Thursday nights. We call it reality check because we keep it real here. We talk about things that probably nobody else talks about. Tonight, I've got a special guest. I'm going to introduce the other guys on the panel. Primal Man, how you doing tonight?
All is well. Thank you for having me once again.
Thanks for being here. Gonzo School, how you doing?
Glad to be back. Doing good.
Good. Good to see you. And we've got an awesome guest tonight. We have Pat Stedman. Pat Stedman is known around the world as a relationship expert, okay? He's also, I like to call him, the foremost authority in the world on hypergamy, for sure. He's a friend of mine. He's a brother. And I appreciate all his input. He's a very smart man. He puts a lot of insight into dating and into relationships. And tonight is a special night because tonight we're not going to talk about, and a lot of channels talk about getting the girl. Tonight we're going to talk about when you already have the girl, you're in a relationship. But let me say hi to Pat. Pat, how you doing?
Tony, I'm great. I just want to say that this is my favorite show to be on. It's really it's a pleasure and a privilege. We get together every 1 to 2 months, and it's one of the things I really look forward to. So always ask amazing questions. So I'm looking forward to tonight.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on, spending your time with us for sure. And tonight is a different kind of a show because I think what's going to happen tonight is we're going to talk about, you know, there's so much talk in the manosphere about getting the girl. Okay, now, or even for a woman to have her man. So we're going to talk about men and women tonight, about when you're in a relationship. But we're going to generalize first because there's so many kinds of relationships. In the manosphere, we think of, when somebody thinks of a relationship, I think they think of, I think you can think of a lot of things. You can think of a long-term relationship, an LTR. You can think of a marriage. You can also think of, on my notes here, one of the kind of relationship phases, I'll call it, is a honeymoon phase. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a beginning to a relationship, but it's still part of a relationship. And then there's like a casual relationship. When I say casual, I mean somebody that you want to have fun with, whether you have this energy. We're going to talk about energy and connections with Pat Stedman. He's very big on energy. So there's a lot of different relationships that are part of this umbrella. So you have your man, you have your woman. And so we're going to talk about energy. Let's talk about energy first, Pat. Tell us about energy.
Well, energy, this is one of those topics that if you mention it to somebody at the wrong kind of place where they're at, they're going to think this is really woo-woo and that it doesn't really make any sense. And what are you talking about? I have to, do X or Y to get a girl. But if you were to take, okay, so let me take a little brief digression about myself. I'm kind of in the manosphere, red pill, maybe community, depending on who you ask. I have been in a lot of different circles. And my objective, why I got into this to begin with, was to try to figure out what's going on, what works, why does it work? Okay? So there are a lot of different philosophies of attraction, a lot of different philosophies about what you have to do. You have some things that can border on the mainstream and useless, but also have some truth, which is that be yourself, right? Don't try to do anything, try to get a girl. Works for some guys, doesn't work for others. You have, make a lot of money. If you make a lot of money, you'll get girls. Well, works for some guys, doesn't work for others. You have looks, of course. You have game. You have all these different schools. No point really belaboring the details of this stuff. But what...
Uh-oh, we lost him.
Did I lose the connection for a second?
For a second, yep. Go ahead.
Hey, I can go inside. Give me 1 second. Let me go inside.
Okay.
Let me go inside. Let me get a better connection here.
Okay.
Just to make sure we don't have this sort of situation. What was the last thing you guys heard me say?
You were talking about the different parts of the manosphere. In other words, you said game and a whole bunch of different things. So
Yeah, let me just give me a second. I'm gonna
take your time.
apologize for the delay here, guys. Just want to make sure that we don't have this problem.
I'm going to say
Make sure we
hi
don't have the
to
problem going
the bald bastard is in the house. We have Alexio, Emmanuel Godson, sorry. Hold the truth hostage. There he is. That's it. Love this guy. Yep.
One second. Usually it's okay outside, but maybe it's the storm. Who knows what the situation is exactly. All right. So we were talking about energy, right? And we were talking about these different philosophies of attraction, these different sort of schools of thought. What works, what doesn't. You have all these people. Some will say that it's money. Some will say it's looks. Some will say it's status. Some will say it's game. Some will say it's just natural. It's supposed to happen that way. All of them are true. Obviously, all of them are true. And we can obviously dig deeper into like the details of that. But what's really relevant here for people who are listening is that on a fundamental level, all of these various traits have energy to them. And when you have the question of why one guy who has money doesn't really get girls or gets used by girls, and one guy doesn't, maybe doesn't have any money, but he gets girls, you can always find as a common thread that there is an energy to the person. Okay? There's an energy to the person, and women are always drawn to the person who has the most energy in the room. There's a nuance to that about kind of what sort of energy they radiate. But the guy who doesn't do anything, the guy who doesn't express much, the guy who people don't feel anything around, don't remember, never gets the girl. Never gets the girl. Now, you don't have to be the life of the party, but people will have to be drawn towards you in some way. If you can sense it, you understand. Women are better at sensing it than men, generally, which is why that's what women go towards. So, you introduced me, Tony, as the foremost expert on hypergamy. Well, if you want to distill hypergamy down to its fundamentals, it's that women are drawn to the man who has the most energy. That's it. Full stop. It's not about the amount of money you have necessarily. It's not about your looks necessarily. It's not about your height. It's not about your, what sort of dating skills or game you have. It's about your energy, but that can be expressed through those different things. But women can feel it. Women can really feel the difference between it. And if you as a man pay attention, you can feel it too. Let's talk about even with women, just real quick. It's not as big of a thing, but we were talking backstage about integrated women. I know we're going to get into that later on, but men are drawn towards women who are able to create energy, who have an energy to them. This is, if there's anything that I can just blast out of the water within the manosphere, is this idea that men are interested in women who, I have to be very precise with this because it's going to trigger people, but I'm going to say that this idea that men are interested in weak women. Now, they won't characterize it as that. They'll say, I just want a woman who's going to submit to me, who's going to surrender to me. And you do want that. You do want a woman to surrender to you. But do you just want a woman who's going to surrender to anybody? Do you want a woman who is barely even there in a certain sense? What do you, in practice, and I'm a clinician, okay? I work with people. I've worked with hundreds of clients on their dating lives and on their relationships. And every single time, the woman who is able to do more things for herself is more attractive to the successful man. More attractive
I'm going to agree with you there.
every single time.
Yeah, we talked about this backstage that I'm more attracted to a woman that has something going on in her life. And it's not because I don't think it's because of my age, but I think it's because that to me that is more attractive. Now, in the manosphere circle, a lot of times, you know, you did say about submissive women, but when it comes to a woman that has something going on in her life, to me, that is more attractive at this stage in my life.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want a submissive woman, but you don't, I mean, you know, you can be the alpha of a bunch of losers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where do you really want to be? And I think a lot of the stuff that comes out, it comes out because there's a significant portion of the men who say it haven't really had a woman do that for them. They're still in the traumatized state of, you know, they need some woman whose entire life and identity is them. And so that's attractive to them. But I mean, the reality is that if you're a successful man, and I don't mean like successful man, like you made some money. I mean, like you are a man with energy who has a sense of self, a sense of purpose. You didn't make money to try to get laid, right? In that situation, those kind of men do not want women who are going to take their energy because they value their energy. They value their energy. That's it. Now, to this comment here, I just want to make a little brief thing. Energy is everything. I mean, it can make a man more attractive, but that just gives a guy a better shot. That's it. Energy doesn't necessarily have to express itself like I'm the life of the party. I'm super energetic in terms of expressive. There are men, we will sort of define these Godfather type men as strong, silent types, or they're men who have a gravity to them. They actually don't say very much. And so I think it's important to not say like, well, that guy doesn't have energy because he's not out there and throwing it all around. If you are pulling people towards you, whether or not you're doing it in an expressive way or whether you're doing it just simply by your presence in the room, that's energy. That's energy. And that is what women look for. Everything else is really details. It's really details. And we can go deeper into that, but I stand by that %.
I want to address Hold the Truth hostage with his comment here, if you want to read this.
Question, Tony, is with Adapt. Do you think that most men, since they grew up without a father, fear adaptation as it means to accept your reality and that it can't change? At work, your thoughts? You want me to address this, Tony?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So to understand masculine energy is to understand that the masculine cares about form. The masculine is form and structure. Fundamentally, that's form and structure. And the feminine is formlessness. It's chaotic. Okay? So what does that mean in practice, and how does it relate to this question? Men who are afraid tend to become rigid because men will naturally form themselves in a way. They will form themselves in some way. And for a man, it feels better to have some structure rather than no structure, because losing structure is leaving the masculine, which is what's home, what's safety, basically. Women are the opposite, right? Women are more formless. And that's why a woman who's in a low-level, distorted feminine is going to seek out men in a low-level, distorted masculine, because she's just looking for someone to give her any form whatsoever. That's why women branch swing, because a branch swinging woman is a distorted feminine woman who is looking to go to different guys who are going to give her some sense of structure, regardless of what the quality of that is. She can't confront herself. You could say the same thing about a guy who's in distorted masculine. He can't confront his weaknesses. He can't confront his rigidity. And the alchemy of a relationship is that, and you see this with a lot of early life relationships, where you have the anima-animist kind of dynamic. The man dates a woman like this, and she breaks him. And when a man's broken, he can go two directions. He can either reform himself higher, or he can collapse further. And that's the sort of question that men are confronted when they take the red pill, so to speak. But it's really a gift. I mean, a woman causing you that sort of fracture is a form of alchemy. It's a very positive experience if you understand the gift that's being provided. Similarly speaking, you doing that to a woman, if a woman is formless for so long, eventually she realizes, I have to, in some way, build myself up. And while you don't want a woman who's afraid and can't leave that space of tasting the masculine, so to speak, you do want a woman, the ideal woman, has a sense of self. The ideal woman doesn't need you. There's a trigger for a lot of guys because they actually won't admit to themselves.
It triggered me a little.
No, I mean, they won't admit to themselves how much the validation of a woman needing them matters to them for their own identity. But you don't want a woman to need you, but you do want a woman who loves you and is all about you and wants to, surrender to you. You want that. But you don't want her to do that out of a position of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
You want her to do it out of a position that you give her this gift. You give her the gift that she doesn't have to be strong with you. She can go back to her natural state of being feminine, of surrendering to you. And then in the rest of her life, if she needs to, she can be strong. She can accept your gifts without some sort of obligation. Because to understand, like, people have heard the term succubus, but succubus is in many ways the natural state of nature for women. A succubus sucks energy out of a man. And yeah, they do it sexually. They do it in a lot of different ways. But an integrated woman takes her cut.
Well, let's you know what? For people that don't know, let's describe the integrated woman versus the disoriented woman, and let's describe the distorted woman, the integrated woman, and the integrated man, and the distorted man. So let's take care of those four topics.
Sure. So, men naturally, and especially if they haven't had the right kind of exposure. I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds with it, but men generally start off in this sort of, I'm a man, I'm gonna do man stuff. Oh fuck, I don't give a fuck about her, whatever. Not ever sort of expressing any kind of sense of emotion, with their friends, always arguing with each other. That's a very common sort of expression, because arguing is a form of connection. And it's one that men will use very often to try to connect with each other. But without getting into the weeds, a man in the low level, you could say distorted masculine, is going to be very externalizing. And he's going to tell other people, you should do this, be very critical, and is going to focus on trying to tell people what to do. This is where you get a lot of those like memes and stuff about men. That there's that famous one. It's one of the earlier YouTube videos where you have the girl who has a nail in her head, and the guy's saying to her, hey, You got a nail in your head, you just take the nail out. And she's like, so you always do this, you always do this, you're like, you just won't listen to, and she's like, I have a headache and you always are trying to. He's like, yeah, because you have a nail in your head. And she's like, see, like, you just don't care about how I feel. And, the video, of course, goes to him being like empathizing with her headache. And she's like, see, that's what I was looking for.
Is that kind of like the phrase where a woman will say, you always say that?
Can be, for sure. Totally can be. It's, yeah, I think that's very much on target, Tony. It's men will try to correct because the healthy masculine is a teacher. So to look at the highest level, everything is about, at the highest level, it's about love. But where the feminine will say, I love you as you are. Doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter how you look, doesn't matter how you perform. I love you as you are. That's like the mother, right? That's true. That is true. And some guys, what they're deficient in their psyche is they don't have any of that love. Okay. But then that's not complete. The other part of it is that I love you, and here's how you can improve. Here's how you can be better, right? And when we say you can be better, we mean this in the standpoint that if you were to do these things, you would have a better experience of life. It's not you would be better according to my standards, because that's a distortion. It's you would objectively for yourself, you would feel better. Okay, so it's like the people who are really morbidly obese, you have maybe a lot of propaganda that's distorting the feminine energy, saying like love at any size. It's like, yeah, but also you're lying to yourself. And the masculine deals with truth, because truth is an aligning factor. And sometimes you need one or the other. If you fall and you break your arm, it's nice to have your mom be there and comfort you when you're crying, you're a little kid. But it's your father that says you have a compound fracture. They go to reset it. They either do it themselves if they could, or they take you to the proper help to get your cast on, to get your arm straightened out. If we only had the feminine, we'd all have these broken limbs. And actually that's what we have in society today. We have a bunch of broken people because a feminine can't straighten people out. The masculine can, but the masculine can be abusive in how it straightens people out. It can damage their sense of self by constantly reinforcing a lack of perfection. And so this is when we have to get into the details of what's the ideal father, what's the ideal mother.
Is this along the lines of to where men are logical, like myself? I'm logical and I'm a fixer. I have to fix it, and I have to fix it now, where women are more emotional. Is that along the same lines?
Yes. So this is a great way to springboard, and you kind of pulled me back on track with this. So the masculine is more logical and the feminine is more emotional. And most people can accept that. But the difficulty is that logic and emotion by themselves aren't enough. So you could, if you really wanted to distill it down, you could say the distorted masculine is all logic, and the distorted feminine is all emotion. I don't think it's a perfect analogy in the sense that we can say a guy is logical, but if you don't have an emotional context, then is the logic actually on a good foundation? Like all logic is downstream of proper assumptions, right? And you can make similar arguments about emotion. Is a woman's emotional state, like to what extent is it even, like you see women just kind of cycle through, they go in like loops. Well, if there's no logic to ground the emotion, then the emotion is almost meaningless. But that is how the low-level distorted masculine and low-level distorted feminine operate. So what happens is that as a man moves forward, he's going to get in touch with his emotional side. And as a woman moves forward, she's going to get in touch with her logical side. The trap is this. A man who moves into his emotions, men have all this responsibility by nature. right? You have to prove yourself as a man. So as a man gets to a place where, oh, well, you don't have to do anything. You're just, you like, it's all love and light. You don't have to worry about anything. Like, just accept yourself for as you are. For a lot of men, what their experiences in practice is that they don't want to leave that, because if they have a bad relationship to the masculine, that's like going to mama. If they don't want to leave that situation, and that's like where a lot of the nice guy, modern man, the weakness comes from. It comes from this depolarization, where they're constantly seeking out mama. Now, the converse is the woman. So the woman, she's in this state of formlessness initially, no real sense of self, and then the issue is that if you don't have the proper protection, and this is where the aspect of not having father figures who are supposed to provide that protection, or having bad father figures who abuse them or whatever, what happens is that those girls either do two things. They either develop a sort of complete disregard for their sense of self, and this is where a lot of hypersexuality comes into the picture. Like, if you ever have a woman who's hypersexual, usually there's some level of abuse in her past. Not to say that doesn't have to do with sex drive, but it's a different thing. And I think if we can dig into that if we want to, but I think a lot of guys will know the difference between this stuff, the sort of impulse to like need to sleep with somebody, to like really show off, really express it. That is a vector, and it usually has to do with some sort of pathway. I don't want to get. And
it's funny you said that, because that's kind of, I actually had one of my questions I wrote down was about when you're in a relationship. Again, we're talking about in relationships tonight. So no matter what kind of relationship it is, you've already met the girl, the woman has already met the guy. So how do you deal with, say, a woman that's been in trauma? You know what I mean? Has had some major trauma in her life. Can you move? In other words, can you, as the integrated man, move toward a better place with her?
Well, let me get to that. Okay. I'll just finish it, because okay. I'm there's so many different tangents I could take with this stuff. The woman who learns to, be strong, so to speak, and take care of herself, for a lot of women, in the same way that for these men, being in the feminine is like, I'm out of responsibility. I can finally relax. I can just look at porn and, do whatever all day long. I don't play video games. I don't have to care about my life. For a lot of these women, there's a sense of protection in the fact that, okay, I have a job. I don't need a man. I can do this myself. Now they're lying to themselves. Both are lying to themselves. They're lying to their essence. But these women, and I think it's even a bigger thing for the women today.
Let me pause you. I love the way you said that. They're lying to their essence. I've never heard it put like that. How about you, Primal Man? Have you heard that before? Mm-hmm. I really like the way that was said. That was really good.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. They need to, it's kind of like they're both escaping from where they actually want to be. But for the women being in this sort of strong place, well, we all know, in any guy who slept with those women, I mean, you can see a lot of this stuff express itself sexually, but they're just not happy being there. They're looking for a man to surrender to, and you see this all the time when you bring the topic up. Those women are obsessed with what we're talking about right now. They are absolutely obsessed with what we're talking about right now. But every single time, you know what they say? They always say, yeah, I want to do that, but the man isn't, I just haven't met a man like that. It's like, well, could be, because to be fair, there's not like an enormous number of guys who have integrated, which would be getting in touch with that feminine, understanding their emotions, and then going back and saying, you know what, I'm going to go back in the arena anyway. And so what happens is that those guys are able to manage situations so much better because they feel something. And rather than the rigid lower level masculine guy who pretends he didn't feel it, and then it gets buried inside of him, and not only affects his health and whatnot, but affects his judgment, because the emotions are there whether you want to acknowledge it or not. They're there. So if you know you feel a certain way, you have that awareness, then you're able to regulate your own emotions, you're able to lead better, you're way more resilient. But also when it comes to women, when a woman's emotional, you can relate to her. You can pace her emotions because you can actually empathize and you can feel her, but you can also help to restructure her because you can go back to the masculine that restructures. For women, the difficulty is that they are so afraid of letting go of that little bit of control they got and to surrender again, which is exactly what they want. Because what they ultimately want is love. They want that connection, but they can't do it. So many of them can't do it, and they make tons of bullshit excuses, nonstop bullshit excuses about, well, he didn't do this, he didn't do this, he didn't do this. It's like, just admit that you're afraid. That'd be a really good step. If you just admitted you were afraid to give it up. An integrated woman isn't afraid to give it up because she can take it back whenever she wants to, and nothing's going to happen to her because she can live by herself if she wants to. But those women radiate so much energy. They're not parasitic like many women are. These low-level women are almost always parasitic. It's a very different kind of relationship because you just last thought, you are in your separate polarities because it is congruent with your essence. You're not in them because you have to. You're not into because of fear. You choose to be in them. And that makes all the difference in the relationship.
I want to backtrack a little because when we talk about, especially in the manosphere under this type of umbrella, when you talk about dipping your toes in the feminine. Now I think that was a direct quote from you. So that right there triggers a lot of men, just that simple phrase. But you put it, the way you put it I think it was one of your last talks that I listened to, was really specific on that. So let's kind of break that down for the men when you say dip your toes in the feminine, because that's all in line with the integrated man.
I mean, any guy who says that he's not going to do that, he's just lying to himself. I don't really know how else to put it. It's full of shit. He's full of shit. Let me give an example of this from a perspective. Let's take women out of the picture because that's a trigger. Let's just talk about it from a leadership perspective. If you're in a military unit, okay, you're in a platoon, let's say, and you have one captain and one platoon, and he's barking out orders. You got to do this, you got to do that, do this, do this, do this. Okay, well, because of the hierarchical structure that exists, they may do that stuff because there's maybe some consequences, there's some power in it. Structural power, which, by the way, is all the stuff that the feminism propaganda feeds off of, is that sort of hierarchical power structure. That doesn't exist when a guy's integrated. The propaganda can't exist. It can't even feed off of anything. It feeds off of these distortions. All propaganda feeds off distortions. Okay. So that man will maybe get compliance, but is he going to get real devotion? Now, if he's really strong and really brave, he might be respected in spite of all of that, right? But it's not going to. It's going to be very different from the man who leads from the front and is able to see, like, okay, we have to, like, we're going to do this stuff. He'll give out orders, but people actually want to follow the orders. The men actually want to follow the orders because they want to make this person proud. They care about this person because they think that person cares about them. Because after the battle, he goes over and he talks to each of them and he asks them how they're feeling. He asks them about what's going on in their relationship. He is engaging with them emotionally. And as a result, it clears out the emotional issues that exist among the other men there. It's not, I mean, there's obviously a different flavor to it, but it's not fundamentally different. You can lead rigidly, or you can lead with an emotional range. And the latter is way more effective. Every great man that ever existed was able to do that. Whereas the former type often got fragged.
Is that go in line with when you say align with the truth and not your ego?
Yeah, I mean, because when you get in touch with your emotions, your ego, well, you kind of see your shadow, right? You're able to see yourself holistically. So to put that in another terminology, your unconscious mind becomes more conscious. And as your unconscious mind becomes more conscious, your unconscious is the gateway to God. Your unconscious is the gateway to higher truths. So the more that you integrate your opposite, which for a man would be the anima and for a woman would be the animus, this is Jungian terminology, but it's accurate. The deeper you go into that, the more that your ability to, like, your ego becomes a way of navigating the physical reality, right? But it's not your guiding force. Like, you can surrender and you can be like, okay, what's my next mission? And you can take it and you can pull other people into that. You step out beyond the line and other people follow you naturally. Versus, I want this. This is what I want. This is my house, my rules. You know, it's a very, very different expression of the masculine. And if I can be if I can simp for the feminine for a second here, I understand why there was fertile ground for all the propaganda to build on. Because men came back from the wars extremely traumatized, and society didn't care at all about them with their trauma. And so they came back, and then the women were pushed in also by society with a lot of these traumatized guys, and they were able to play off a lot of these distortions. It's a whole other story. This is about psychological operations, and it's different, social engineering. But if we go back prior to the Industrial Revolution, men weren't traumatized like that. They weren't. And the degradation of society has had to do with the increasing traumatization of men, and now recently women as well. But men were traumatized easily a century before women began to really gain the focus on this.
Primal Man, Gonzo, you guys got any input? Feel free to jump in. You guys been quiet.
I got a lot to say, but I'm getting a lot of wind right now.
Well, that's all right. It's pretty clear here. Go for it.
Go first, Gonzo.
Yeah, I'm smoking on all this.
Yeah, this is intense, man. This is why I love having Pat on, because I have to. I don't know about you guys, but I have to process every time I hear Pat talk, because it keeps my gears going. You know what I mean? So, but Gonzo, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say it. This kind of reminds me. I can't remember the guy's name. Maybe you guys will remember his name right now. But he was on 21 Studios recently, and it was the whole thing with his wife and their son, and basically they were all the trans propaganda and all this stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's the guy in Texas.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember his name right now, and I can't I can't think of it. But he said something that kind of reminded me of this whole thing. But he was talking about how essentially how men, the competition that men have had for women has fundamentally changed men, like it's evolved men. And I've been smoking on that ever since I heard that, but got me thinking about that. So I don't know, I'll just throw that out for some smokes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll tackle that now, and Gene, you can, I guess, jump in later with that. I mean, that is a really great comment, Gonzo, and this is the big thing. Our experience with the opposite sex is formative to our own psyche. I mean, that's it. Now, Jack Donovan, I love Jack Donovan. I mean, we all know Jack Donovan. He's brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant. And we had some conversations about this. He's very well versed in Jung as well. And there's this whole stuff about is the unconscious of a man feminine? And is the unconscious of a woman masculine? And my sort of perspective is that that's not entirely true, but there is an aspect that is. There is an aspect that is. It doesn't mean that you are that, you know what I mean? But that comes out when you have a relationship with a woman. As a man, if you have a relationship with a woman, that emerges. And this is one of the things, and I want to comment on this because I think that the Godfather himself doesn't really understand the deeper psychology behind all this stuff. But when you have that sort of, when he talks about how men are the real romantics, that's their unconscious. That's the feminine unconscious part that comes out. And why women are actually, you know, oh, they're so romantic. They're all about love, but then they can be super ruthless. That's their masculine unconscious. That's what's going on here. Now, it's not fair to characterize them fully like that. But in the process of that exchange, if a man is not aware of himself, then that unintegrated, unconscious aspect of him that has a feminine characteristic will emerge, and it will make him act like super sentimental. And this is a major thing that actually women, as they get older, tend to become, women as they're older tend to become a lot more hard. Like you see some accounts, mostly from Eastern Europe, talk about like the babushka. Mm-hmm. You know, the babushkas are all like, they don't take any shit. The babushkas, like they got the AK-47, you know, they're in like Croatia or something like that. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck because they've had maybe not a full integrative process, but they've definitely got in touch with their masculines, put it that way. And a lot of the older men will often tend to become more sentimental, or they'll pull back from being like the kind of really, you know, ruthless people maybe, or really aggressive people that they were when they were younger. Not a universal characteristic, but it's common enough to be folk wisdom that this is a natural progression of the psyche over time. But if you only get controlled by your unconscious when you don't integrate it. So if you understand these aspects of yourself, and you use your experience with women to have that brought out of you, well, then you can come out of the entire experience, I would say, in a certain sense, more masculine than ever. It's just that the masculinity is almost cleaner because it is able to, you're not consumed by it. That's, I guess, I don't want to be redundant, but yeah, that's how I would describe it.
Primal Man?
Man, I'm just enjoying listening.
Yeah, it's tough to comment. It is, because Pat is always very intoxicating when he talks, and again, I have to process what he's talking about, you know, because
yeah, of course. Yeah, me too. I agree. I had something you said at the beginning of the show, Pat, that's still sticking with me. When you say women are drawn to the man with the highest amount of energy in the room, right? Now, would that be subjective from woman to woman? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to confuse that with a man that is about something, so to speak, whether it be a man that has some sort of, I don't want to use mission, right? He's on a mission. Women can sense that. But how is it subjective that a woman, you know, who's to say the man, you know, who's to say what man has the most energy in the room? Would that be subjective is what I'm trying to ask.
Amazing question, Gene. Yeah. So it's
Because
so
I think saying the most energy is something that we have to break down.
yeah, well, there's we can get into the details of like what the most energy expresses itself as, and this is something that becomes difficult to measure through a material lens. I would say that it's objective, but it's experienced intuitively. If you ever go to some event, there's going to be some people there who stand out to you and some people who don't.
Yeah.
And women are very, very attuned to that. Now, the second part of your question is about, well, will all women then go for the same guy? But then you have the aspect of resonation. Is it resonance? What guy is resonating with the woman? And this goes into the second aspect of it, which is energy and vibration. So what vibration is the woman at, and what vibration is the man at? You can have a lot of energy, and that energy can be mostly characterized as anger, right? You have a lot of energy, and that could be mostly characterized as positivity. It could be characterized as love. You can break down to this, but it's levels of consciousness. Basically, it's fundamentally levels of consciousness. And if you are a woman who is at a certain level of consciousness, you are going to be drawn to a man who has some sort of complementary aspect towards that. I would argue some alchemical aspect towards it, that the two of you together will result in some sort of revelation of each other's unconscious self.
Now let me interject really quick. Let's just all be honest here. Most women are traumatized. Most, not all, but most. And men are too, but it manifests itself more. It shows up more through women.
Let's dive into that. Why do you think that is? Do you think just because men and women handle trauma differently?
Oh, because my answer to that question, Pat might have something else to say. My answer to that question is that women have been dealt a huge disservice by men from decades back, decades and decades ago. They've been failed by men previous generations, and it's starting to show up a lot more in the modern era. Also, to access to information as well. You know, we can see it a lot more. We can identify it a lot more now. Pat, you want to break that simple piece down?
Well, yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with you. I think if we go back to the form and formlessness aspect, this is like something that's going to really piss off a lot of people. But I'm going to say it because it is the truth. Most psychologists are women, and most female psychologists therapists don't fix their patients. Now, why is that? Why was it that, okay, and I'm prefacing this. I know it doesn't fucking matter for our community, but I want to preface it because I don't want people to get the wrong impression. I'm trying to be scientific here, okay? Not making a negative comment about women or about the fact that, you know, women suck compared to men or anything like that. But it is an objective fact that the most influential psychologists have always been men. So why is that the case? You can say it's patriarchy, blah, blah, but clinically speaking, they've also made the most impact on patients per capita. So what is going on here? I think it's connected to exactly what you're saying, Gene, exactly what you're saying, which is that women have a difficulty forming themselves, structuring themselves, okay? If I have a gripe with the manosphere, it's not that the manosphere doesn't help men, it's that they don't help men as much as they could.
Right.
But the manosphere does help to structure broken men. Even the biggest red pill tards out here, people who I think are broken themselves, losers, not a big fan of them. I would never say for a second that they have not helped men structure themselves who are broken. Not a very elegant geometric formation, but they've structured them. But the problem is that many of these women, unless they've been really integrated themselves, they will listen to another person's feeling and they'll say, oh, well, it looks like you have this problem. Oh, well, it looks like you have this. But they can't actually help to form them as an individual again. Whereas a male psychologist, well, usually they're pretty good because there's not many of them, so you have to really care. But even if they weren't really good, even if they were just, like, we see a lot of fear, like a guy who will literally put out basic platitudes. Look, stop being a bitch, go lift, you know, get over it. Like, that actually, it's better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that'll do a lot for a guy who has never had any guidance or never any form whatsoever. So the reason that women appear more broken and maybe are more broken is partially because they express their brokenness more than a lot of the men, who we actually don't even really hear much of, except maybe on the internet where they'll vent. But most of them, sort of incels, etc., as they're just self-described, I think, will just simply detach entirely. But these women don't have anybody to give them any shape whatsoever. And that's why all progress emanates from the development of man.
Yes.
And that, so I'm going to say one last thing, and I think Tony probably wants to jump in with another question here or whatever, any of you guys want to, but most men do not seek help. But when a man does, he improves. And I work only with men partly because of this, because working with women is very middle ground and it's a complicated dynamic, not only because you kind of have to mirror a mentorship state, and I'm married, I don't want to be involved with that energy. But second off is that women will exist in this kind of, well, I kind of want to get help, but I don't, but I kind of want to get help, but I don't. But a woman in a relationship who's broken will fix herself if the man is put together. You can see some really fucked up women. I'm not encouraging anybody to just, you know, lock up a messed up girl. But I am making the point that women will reconfigure very, very quickly under the influence of a put together man. If he knows how to pace her properly, they can reconfigure a lot better than a man who you really have to, like, to work with a man, he really has to be broken, or he has to be already somewhat on the path to integration, that he's willing to just take like little, like, oh, you, I think, have a piece I'm looking for. Like, those are the best clients to work with, because they're just like, they're already fixing themselves. They're just looking to get there a little bit faster. But if you're not dealing with those guys, you have to deal with guys who have literally been broken completely, because otherwise they won't break their form. But you can take a broken woman and she loves you, well, you can do quite a bit with that, actually, if you know what you're doing.
I have a segue question, Pat. Say you have a man, he basically does exactly what you just described with a broken woman. I mean, and another reality is the fact that if most men are wanting to get into relationships or marriages in this day and age where we are in 2021, it's most likely going to be with a woman with some sort of trauma in her past. Mm-hmm. Now, you have a man, and let's just say he's squared away. Whatever, any type of definition that you want to give that, he's squared away. He's a proper leader, and he's integrated in your terms. And a woman is under that. She's in that marriage or relationship with him. Is it possible at that point for her to basically, can she cut that off and decide that, okay, I'm going to go back into my trauma. I'm going to go back into Stockholm Syndrome, right? To her captors, whether it be a toxic family or a destructive family, destructive community, destructive, career choice or whatever. Can she leave that man's leadership and be back and get remolded into that bad lifestyle again.
Well, yeah. So Gene, just to be really clear for people who are listening, I would never advocate a guy try to save a hoe, right? Try to save a broken woman. I would never advocate that
Sure.
because it's.
But that's essentially what we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to save a bunch of hoes.
You know, I mean,
we're gonna change this world as men first, right? But we're gonna have to save a bunch of hoes in the process.
it depends on the degree of damage that we're talking about. The women,
Sure.
There's a lot of context to this stuff,
Sure.
but to your point with this, the reason I would not advocate a man trying to do this is because a woman who has abused herself
Mhm.
is not going to respect a man who doesn't abuse her.
Okay.
And this is one of the really, really difficult things. But if you're with a woman and she says like, oh my God, you're amazing. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You're, and she's just raving about you. That's a red flag, actually. It's a red flag. And the reason it's a red flag is because, well, first off, she's trying to game your ego. It's girl game, trying to puff up your ego. But the second piece of it, which is connected, is that if you treat her well in spite of the way she treats herself, then where she may go with it, and where she often will go with it, is that this guy thinks I'm so great and I'm not great, therefore he must not really be that great. And so she will actually look at the guy who treats her well as not worth it. And that's where a lot of the game stuff you see comes from.
I agree with that 100% right there, what you just said. And that's almost a shame because
It's tragic.
Yeah, it is because what happens is, like what Gene was saying about saving a woman. I tend to, like I was talking to Gene earlier today, I tend to take on with my friends. Now, if I don't care about you, it's different. But with my friends, it could be Pat, it could be Gonzo, it could be Man. But I'm concerned, and I basically have empathy. I can feel what they're feeling. And same thing a lot of times when I meet a woman. And that might be a fault or a weakness. I'm still trying to figure that out. But, this is part of the Tony pill, is adapting to these things.
Yeah.
Love it.
So is it a weakness or is it a strength when you feel somebody's pain? And, trying to save somebody, and I don't want to say I try to save somebody, but I don't think that I'm the kind of person where I don't want to think that anybody is lost. I don't want to think that they're not repairable or fixable. That's a very nihilistic to me. But I'm saying is not.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is not somebody who's traumatized. You wouldn't advocate for fixing that. But
well, Tony. So this is such a good topic.
Pat has opened up like 1,000 rabbit holes, and we're all just like trying to figure out which one to go down.
Well, I might have to get some more wine, but we can keep going with this as long as.
Let's rock.
This is such a really good point. The wait, just I lost my train of thought for a second there. Just say that last thing again, Tony. That you were saying
about saving somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
I don't even know if I like saving. I don't like the word saving.
No, and you shouldn't like the word saving. Everybody can be saved.
Yeah.
But to be saved, you have to make the choice to save yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is coming to save you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a universal thing. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Men do have a savior complex.
Mm-hmm.
Contrary to a bunch of the bullshit, it's not like a beta trait, whatever the fuck that means. It's a natural part of being a man to take care of other people. Unless you're a psychopath, you're going to want to take care of people you care about. Part of being a leader is bearing the brunt of things. That is the man with the burden. Okay, now the sort of simp beta aspect is when you do that out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're like a slave basically, and the woman's using you for that's not at all the same thing. But people are too fucking stupid to understand that there's a difference between somebody their follower falls down, they're walking on the path and he falls down, he collapses of exhaustion, he carries that person, versus the other person saying, I don't want to walk, you have to carry me. It's two fucking completely different things, but people are so stupid and traumatized in this community that they can't even understand the distinction between that. And so they get to the point where it's like, if you ever buy anything for a woman, you're a simp. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to listen to you for advice because you obviously got things figured out. It's like ridiculous. Like everything is so black and white because they can't brace with the reality that the world is actually complex. Everything's based on context. And you have to be able to operate in these various contexts and be able to discern, yeah, this woman is a gold digger. This woman wants me to buy her a drink because she is looking for the validation of that. She doesn't care about me. And versus the other woman who I want to buy her a drink because I enjoy being around her.
Mm-hmm.
So let's have a round, whatever. Like, I want to do it. Like, totally different intentions come from that. Not to get into the weeds with this stuff. The savior thing is something we have to watch for as guys.
Well, let me ask you a question now. When we talk about a savior thing, I think a lot of guys, what the issue is that they, and this is a big thing in the manosphere, we know about options. So a man who doesn't have options and is focused on that one girl and the only girl that he can get or is near, then I think his savior option goes into full speed, full mode. Would you agree or disagree with that?
100%. But I mean, everything can be distinguished here by consciousness. And we talked about energy and vibration. And you could say that, if you were to look at a wave, it's like frequency and amplitude. So you have the amount that's put out, and then you have at what frequency it's put out. So a guy who's in fear, I mean, there's some people who put out an enormous amount of fear, right? They just blast it. A guy could have a lot of energy to him, but he's in a very big fear state. He will make other people fear it. I can tell you, I have a lot of energy. And if I wanted to go on Twitter and if I wanted to make people feel afraid, I can make a lot of people feel afraid. If I wanted to do that, I could blast that frequency.
And then charge them.
Theoretically. What's that?
And then charge them.
Yeah, I could charge them, right. I could charge them $1,000 an hour, like some people. The point of all this stuff is just simply to say that your consciousness matters a lot. And so if you are in a fear state, then a lot of the desire to save comes from an aspect of fear, because it comes from an aspect of scarcity. And, you have people who will say like, on the prize and think abundantly, and that's good. I don't think it's super effective, but it's got the right intention behind it, which is to try to shift those beliefs. And a lot of the reason that guys will go out and date a lot of women is simply to, your unconscious, your inner mind needs exposure to the external. And so if you have a lot of awareness, you need less exposure to the external to shift the internal. Whereas some people, if they're less aware, it's like you bang your head against the wall over and over again until you finally get it. But anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds with this stuff.
Yeah, this is good because we can branch off into all different things. Before we move on, Primal Man or Gonzo, you guys got any input on just what we talked about?
Let me get a little full up.
Okay, no worries.
And keep going.
Go for it.
I was just gonna say, backtracking, the initial more statement than a question to Pat was traumatized women are gonna be mostly attracted to a certain kind of guy in a lot of ways. When traumatized women find a guy like we were saying earlier, the guy treats them well and then like something happens, and then there's a disconnect there. That's when they basically essentially realize that, in our logical words, is I'm too traumatized to be with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced that in my life.
Of course,
that exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I think we all have. You know,
Yeah.
the older you get, and if you're single, you do experience that in a big way sometimes. And I think it's the part to be able to discern that, you know, but also, like you said, you know, we get to a point in our life to where, you know, if you do want to be in a relationship, because that's what this show is about tonight, is about relationships. And we're going to get into it when Pat comes back. We're going to talk about keeping that fire burning when you're in a relationship. And this is probably the part that's going to maybe trigger some people, because there's so many types of relationships in the manosphere. There's not, when people think of relationship, everybody thinks of, if I was to say to you, Gonzo, relationship, what does that mean in your mind, right? Just off the top of your head, instantly.
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't tell me a whole lot. It doesn't tell me a whole lot. That's the thing. And that's the first thing that I notice, actually. Okay. Because some people, you know, because I mean, just like what you said, there's so many different types of relationships. And so, I mean, if you want to ask me like what a healthy relationship is, or like what a functional working relationship is, then I could, you know, I would say that, you know, the man is grounded. The man is, you know, and the woman is in a position to be subservient in the relationship. You know, it's not like this war. It's not like this battle. And so, but I mean, there's so many different relationships. Like you said, it's just chaotic. There was interesting. There was I'm not sure if you caught it. There was that interview that Jesse recently did with a couple of people that attended his church.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting to hear them talk about that, their relationship, and like how that worked out, or how that.
And they were very honest. They were, in fact, I was surprised on how honest they were. You know, knowing the platform that they were speaking on. You know?
Yeah, and for anybody that hasn't,
I don't know if they knew the platform they were speaking on that well. So, but their honesty was really good in that interview. So.
Well, I'll just say, for anybody who hasn't heard it, there's a part where the you know, Jesse asked the girl, you know, if she would stay home and take care of the kids, and she was kind of like, no, I don't really want to do that. And then he asked the guy, well, would you marry a woman who wouldn't stay home and take care of the kids? And he was like, no.
But he had kids, I believe, right?
And he had kids. He had kids, and I think he was planning on having more kids.
Were they Gonzo? Is that they were together?
Yeah, they're in a relationship.
Well, you know, and that brings me to my little piece that I want to say really quick. A guy who says that and he's convicted, right? I was thinking of the word, Gonzo, when you was thinking of a word to use. Convicted was the word, or under conviction, or belief, for, you know, another way to say it. Sometimes we can change as men. We can grow. We can become more integrated, as Pat would say. Sometimes the woman, it might come to a shock as her, or it might come as a, you know, she don't know how to receive it or take it. At that point, she's gonna have a choice to make if the man is so convicted. Yes, it is crickets. Yeah, it's me on the back porch.
It's nice. I like it, Gene.
And
it is kind of nice.
I want you to mute yourself, because then you like cuts. It's like there's no.
Yeah, there's no ambience. But she can fall off. I've noticed a woman who's not willing to integrate herself under that man's convictions, if it's proper. Let's just say she can cut herself off. She might have to go and integrate herself somewhere else on her own terms.
Let me jump in here. I'm gonna again trigger a lot of preconceptions here about stuff. So, okay, we have a 6.5-month daughter. Okay, and we both work right now. Now, let's put this in the context. Does my wife have to work? No. And would she quit her job if I asked her to quit her job? If I told her, I said, this isn't working. It's not working. It's fucking up the business. She would quit her job. She would do it. Where would my motivation be, though, for her to do for her to quit her job right now? Now, I have some practical considerations. There's practical considerations for her to keep it at the moment. However, the main reason I haven't pushed her to leave the job is because I think that she needs to go through the process. I think that she would do it if I asked her to do it, because she loves me and she's surrendered to me, right? And she trusts my judgment with the relationship. But if I were to ask her to do it at this point, at this moment, it would be out of ego. It wouldn't be out of alignment. It wouldn't be resonance. And so we have to ask ourselves as guys, a lot of the manosphere want women to do all these things because they feel insecure. I have to be very careful with this because a lot of guys also, this doesn't mean that women not doing those things is appropriate. Okay, this is the nuance here. A woman, it's like, this isn't about like, how dare you ask a woman to not work? Women have to be like, this is all propaganda. It's all bullshit. But ultimately, in a very high level relationship, you honor each other's choices. Everything is about helping the other person to grow. And through that sort of understanding and acceptance of each other, you guys grow closer together. Some relationships are going to have a slightly different energetic to them. They may be a little bit more extremely polarized, one direction or another. Everybody's different. They have different kind of contracts, you could say, with each other. But it's really important here that a lot of guys go from the woman gets to do whatever she wants to, no, I get to do whatever I want, and she has to do everything I say. And it becomes this sort of like, let's flip the power. Whereas, yeah, from a perspective of a guy, it's better. It's better to be, the one who has the power versus the one who's powerless.
But the man's coming from a place of ego conviction.
Well, that's exactly right, Gene. It's exactly right. And it's actually, if you really look at it, it's coming from a greater level of powerlessness. So if I have to deal with a man who's all about their ego, easiest person in the world to defeat, because I can see him clear as day. I can see all of his weak spots. If I was inclined to do so, I could destroy him. I mean, I could destroy him verbally. I could position things in a way that if he had some sort of plan, that I could set him up for failure, because I know exactly I could set a trap and he would walk right into it because I understand his psychology. It's really easy to deal with people who are operating based on ego, which is why it's really predictable for any guy who goes out of their way to really talk about how ridiculously alpha they are, that they obviously have an inferiority complex, because the most successful and most grounded guys don't think about that shit at all. And I can tell you that from personal experience, because my marriage is excellent. It's excellent. But what's interesting is that I would get triggered by that stuff earlier, partly because of my own experience in the manosphere. I mean, I literally, I work early mornings, I work nights, and I work weekends. And my wife, during the day, I and my mom, grandma takes care of the kids here and there, but I take care of our daughter. I take her in for feedings. Now that's very much like a lot of guys are like, I don't have to do that. I could at any time eliminate that, and maybe I will in the future. We talk very often, how much is this working? How much is it affecting my business? Trying to make it work, see if it works one way or another. But I'm not approaching it based on ego. I'm approaching it based on, hey, for the family, this doesn't work. Doesn't work. Or does it work? we know that, I mean, going down the line, it's not gonna, you know, this is not like a long-term thing. But at the same time, I don't look at my wife as like she's, and by the way, it's not a disparaging comment, because I think if she wanted to do that, if she wanted to be a housewife for the next 20 years, I wouldn't have any problem with it at all. That would be in alignment for her. I don't know exactly. I don't think she even knows exactly, but she's very, very smart. And maybe what happens is that there's a while that she takes care of the next, you know, 3-4 kids. And then maybe at some point she runs real estate that we build together, right? Because I don't want to deal with that, but she would be good at dealing with it. Or maybe she runs her animal shelter. I mean, the point here is that I'm not trying to put her down for my own ego. That doesn't matter to me. What matters is that we're a functioning family. We have an appropriate division of labor. We understand each other's strengths. We work together, we communicate, and we get our needs met. Hasn't affected her sex life.
Well, that's a perfect segue into what we're going to talk about next, which is the topic of the show. How do you keep that fire burning? You're a married guy. We're going to start with marriage. We have 2 married guys on the panel, Gonzo and Pat. So how do you keep that fire? How do you keep that how do you keep that love? How do you keep that passion, that romance, that sexual energy, which when, you know, that will trigger people who are, you know, when you say sexual energy, outside of the manosphere, people will say it's all about sex. Well, it's a pretty important part of a relationship in a marriage. So how do you keep that fire burning for a guy that's married? Because I see a lot of dead marriages. I see, you know, in my business, I do go to people's homes, and it's like, the energy, like you say, is so poor. Mm-hmm. I can feel it. I can feel depression. You can feel the, you know, whether they're adding something on, but you can feel the energy, which is not a good energy. Mm-hmm. So how do you keep that fire burning?
Well, there are, I'm going to be really precise here. And I also, like, I think transparency is important. Yeah, Dread Game, of course. I love Michael. I love Michael. But he's taking the words out of my mouth. I mean, that's what most guys are going to argue. And to be fair, I do think that there is a context where Dread Game is appropriate. Mm-hmm. If you're in a marriage and it's a dead bedroom, and the woman doesn't respect you, doesn't value you at all, then you are going to, if you want to change her orientation towards you, you're going to have to do things that are going to shock her out of complacency. You're going to have to shock and shatter her perception of you. And Dread Game is the way that you would do that. That's what you would do in that situation.
Why don't you, somebody doesn't know Dread Game, go ahead and just explain it.
Oh yeah, well, Dread Game is basically, it's trying to trigger, I mean, on a deeper level, it's triggering a woman's trauma, and it's trying to trigger feelings of that, you know, other women are going to go after you, mm-hmm. that you're a valuable individual. So in practice, that would be, there's varying degrees of this. There's varying degrees of this expression, which would be, you know, talking to other women, like flirting overtly. Some guys would even take it to like borderline cheating, even super extreme versions of Dread Game. Again, there are some contexts, so this is good. There's a lot of context that would not be good. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of contexts in relationships. And this is what I've always said about the basic red pill stuff. And I know this clinically because I've worked with as many guys who needed to just understand attraction fundamentally, and maybe more guys who needed to be deprogrammed from stupid shit that they heard in this corner of the internet. And what happens is that if your issue is not desire in the relationship, but it's more comfort or predominantly comfort, then if you go and do Dread Game, then the marriage is done. I mean, it's done. It's automatically done. So you have to, it's kind of like saying that every person who goes to the ER like has the same problem in the emergency room. You know what I mean? It's like someone's a gunshot victim, someone Tolo Ramasi. No, but it's like literally, it's like someone's under cardiac arrest, someone's been shot in like the head, you know. Oh, it's the same thing. Gotta do the same thing every time. You know, it's like amputate the right leg every single time. Like, it doesn't matter what the fuck happens. It's always the same medicine prescribed. I wouldn't call it preventative medicine. So
there's a shot.
So anyway, where did this get off on?
We were talking about keeping that fire burning in a relationship.
Yeah, keeping the fire burning. So within sort of the full disclosure stuff here, there is a way to keep the fire burning using what I'd call black magic, this sort of game that focuses on pushing trauma. And so if a girl is not giving you anything, right, and you push on her trauma, you push on her fear of lack, which Dread Game does, then she might have a trauma response where she tries to compete after you. And so that can increase your sex life. Is that the kind of sex life you want? Maybe it's what you want. I mean, I can tell you from experience that a woman who is afraid and who wants you is going to put out more sexually. Mm-hmm. She's going to be aroused. There's just no doubt about that. Anybody who tells you that's not the truth, they're trying to sell you something. However, there are externalities that result from that. And you have to ask yourself, what kind of, that's good. It's kind of hot sex. There's a lot of tension, a lot of anticipation around it, right? But sex is also really good when you love each other. Sex is also really good when, you know, she wants to fuck you because she really likes you and she enjoys.
I'm glad you said that, because it's almost like, I guess, what's the term? Starfish sex. You just, or whatever it's called. You just don't. I mean, who really wants that?
No one wants that. No one wants that.
I mean, does somebody really want that? Don't you want passion? Don't you want that, you know, that romance that's involved with sex too? You know, I mean, ideally, I get it that guys just want sex, but wouldn't you want better sex? Let's put it that way.
Well, it's like people say, you know, like sex is like pizza. Any pizza is, you know, good pizza. Some pizza is better than other, but every pizza is good. That's not even true. Some pizza is shit. Mm-hmm. I mean, there have been times, you know, I'm one of those people who found God through the gutter a little bit, and I've had sex that is really bad. I mean, and I'm not saying really bad even because the person didn't know what they were doing, just really bad in terms of the energy exchange between both of us. Not good, dissonant. It is really, I mean, the people who say this stuff, like, they kind of are just telling everybody that they haven't really done it that much. You know, if you're going to make these kind of claims, you obviously Hawaiian pizza, pineapple pizza. It's always the most. Ugh. Michael, I'm just gonna troll you a little bit. That is like the most common chick thing on dating profiles, like pineapple pizza. You know.
I don't like any fruit with my meat, or I don't want mango chutney chicken. Sorry, I don't like it. I don't want raisins in my coleslaw. There's just something about that. I've always been like that. I do not want pineapple on my pizza. Ever.
Well, you're Italian, so I mean, some of these things are heresy. But yeah, the point here is that a lot of these guys in the red pill, and I think Michael said it really well, reductive. I mean, they really do believe it's this or that. Either it's starfish sex or she's freaked out that you're going to leave her sex. You know, and it's actually not either of those things necessarily. Mm-hmm. My sex life really, really improved as our relationship improved. And there's not fear involved with it. I remember there were periods of, like, my current relationship, my marriage, where there was like a lot of this sort of game stuff being played. It's very like hit or miss. It's very hit or miss. And you can make an argument that I wasn't fully on board with it. Like if I had been fully on board with it, maybe it would have been different. But I didn't want to exist in that kind of dynamic. I don't want to have a relationship where I don't feel like I can connect to my wife and have bad sex. And I'll just make this point as like it's either like you have good sex or you can't connect, right? One of the two things. This is so important to talk about. Everything comes down to your assumptions. If you are faced with a dichotomy that it's either this or that, your assumptions are wrong. There's another way that you can do it. And my whole path in this business as a dating relationship coach, I fucking started this stuff in 2008. I mean, this entire path has been trying to figure out why some relationships work and some don't. I went from this sort of pickup artist space to like hippies, authentic connection, red pill. I was in all these different communities because one group would say only one thing worked, and I would see the exception. And I'd say, well, this couple doesn't do that, at least as they're described. So why does their relationship work? And I try to figure it out. I didn't just say, oh, well, they're fucking betas, beta. So what? No, it's like that. They have an incredible marriage, and he is not red pill at all. So what's going on here? Not saying that's the relationship I want, but you can't say that they're not fucking. They're fucking a lot. So what's happening here that's different? And you find out that it's all about the context. That's what it's about. It's all about the context. You have to understand that. So
let's go into a different type of relationship. Let's say I'm going to really throw a screwball in here. A Christian guy, okay? And now I consider myself a Christian. Am I perfect in that realm? Absolutely not. But let's say a guy wants to now meet a woman, not have sex, get married. How do you, and this might be because I'm old school, but how do you court a woman and how do you keep that fire going without sex?
Okay.
Because this is a tough one. This question I had written down, and I don't think it's one that men nowadays struggle with, but I think there are men out there in different cultures, different societies, Christian society, that this is the way it should be done. Now, I think it's very rare that this is done, and that's the truth. I don't think that anybody can disagree with me there. So how does a guy keep a fire burning without actually being close?
Well, I'm assuming that the girl that he's with is also in the same community, right? Okay, so you're both in a very trad Christian community. Honestly, this is a big thing. I'm also Christian. I wouldn't call myself perfect. I'm, maybe more esoteric, varietal. But I think that the stupidest thing that a lot of the modern Christians do is that they will take we're not going to have sex before marriage. We're going to, we're going to be pure about all this stuff. And they will adapt themselves to modern contexts where they're not going to get together. I mean, honestly, you ask, we had a poll a little bit ago and asked a bunch of people, how soon did you know the person that you're married, that you were going to marry them? And I think the overwhelming number was less than 3 dates. I mean, they knew it within less than 3 dates. Now, they may have doubted it, but they may have known it on a deeper level, and they might have rationalized their way out of it. You know, and you could say after the fact that did they try to convince themselves later on that they did know it earlier than they actually did, whatever. But the fundamental thing is people really do know a lot sooner than you give them credit. I think the stupidest shit that's out there right now in Christian communities is the idea that you are going to date for years before getting married. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree.
I think it's very appropriate if you want to be conservative, is that you can date for 6 months and then you should get engaged for 6 months and you can be married. You could actually have that if you wanted to. I wouldn't do less than that personally because of things that can come up. But there is absolutely no reason that you should be celibate with someone for longer than a year. And really, you could do it in half a year. And if you can't fuck for that long, then you got bigger problems. So I think most of the problems are downstream of that. Like you have this is like it's like a joke about Pentecostal and Catholic girls who are like together for like 5 years, and you know they're a virgin in one hole. You know, they're not a virgin in all the others. It's really, it's not how it was meant to be.
Is that really a virgin?
Yeah, I mean, right? It's like they're like, oh, I can only have anal sex because I'm saving myself for marriage. Like what? What?
I've heard that analogy before. You know, in fact, I think it was MD brought it up on Primal Man stream, the last stream where he said that. Yeah, you're not a virgin.
Totally,
you know, you give a job and you know other things, but you know, so it's just kind of a strange thing to me. So.
Yeah.
Primal Man, any input on this? I know you do.
He threw me for a loop with that last part. Oh, all right, bring it back in, boys. Oh, oh man,
we got Primal Man blushing. Woohoo!
How's the rain, by the way? How's the rain?
Sounds nice with the crickets.
Yeah, Pat, man, spot on with the yeah. If you can't do this thing in 6 months, what are you doing? I mean, but some guys, you know, some guys come to God in a relationship, and that's a different story. Some guys turn to God in a relationship. Maybe they go through a really bad time and find themselves at the end of the rope, and God's there, and they say, you know what? This is my conviction. This is the only way. I will lose everything to follow God. Mm-hmm. And in those situations, you might have been dating several years at that point, and then all of a sudden, these things start making sense. You start seeing your flaws. You start becoming more integrated. And at that point, I mean, we can break this. We can go down that rabbit hole. What happens when a man says, I'm going to follow God? I'm at the end of my rope. That's all I'm interested in at this point. I've tried everything. But yet he's in a relationship or something. And the woman is not there yet. Or maybe she, you know, I guess it's debatable whether she wants to be or not to be. Where would you go with that, Pat?
I mean, when you put it that way, do you follow God or do you follow a woman? I mean, you follow God.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's not. It's and it's really interesting. I mean, I had an ex, and I don't want to be really honest. I never lost God. I never fell away from God, but I had a sort of spiritual crisis. As you can probably tell from this, I'm kind of intellectual in how I think about things, right? I mean, I'm very analytical. And so if you approach the Bible with a purely analytical mind, without any sort of feeling or intuition, then you can dissect stuff. You can be like, this didn't happen. This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't, you can do all sorts of shit. I had very positive experiences. Anyway, that's not the point. Go down that stuff. I was dating a girl. She's like super sexual girl. I mean, we had crazy sex life. And series of things happened. We were long distance for a period, and she came at me. I won't be too graphic here, but suffice to say, she had very salacious pictures she sent me. And then the next message she sent me was, "I had a revelation from God. I can't have premarital sex anymore." I was like, oh fuck. So I went back to the Bible because I was
That's
like,
kicking the nuts right there.
dude, I went back to the Bible so that I could argue with her about, you know, not doing that, like trying to like biblical scholar her way out of that whole situation. But what actually happened with it was that, I mean, the relationship didn't work and she went down a really, obviously, I mean, if you have the awareness of female psychology, you know that that didn't actually have to do with anything with religion for her. It was a rationalization that she was making.
It was a break. It was a break that she was. It was an escape. It was an outlet.
Yeah, she was. I mean, the truth is that there was another guy who was encroaching on the picture while I wasn't around, and that this was a way that she could sort of justify the increasing pullback.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
But
for the man, it's a completely different situation, though.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I don't want to digress too much from it, but the point is that as a result of going through that, I don't have to get super personal with it, but I had an experience and I went back. And even though I didn't become like super biblical, not that I shouldn't have done that. I never like lost my connection with God after that. I mean, I had a really, really profound experience, and it was because I was trying to fuck this girl. I mean, God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? So the kind of point here, though, is that with that level of awareness, with that level of calling, there's nothing that, and in the last couple of years, last 2 years in particular, I mean, I've really much been about surrender. What is like, it's not about my path. It's about what path is destined for me. And the more that I've fallen into that, I mean, you literally, there is nothing that anybody, let alone a woman, could say to me. I mean, I have disrupted enormous numbers of relationships. Not my marriage, which has gotten stronger in the process because she's on the same page as me. But I mean, yeah, no way whatsoever that a woman could pull me away from that. But I think a woman maybe would be able to do it for a guy who is maybe following God, so to speak, from reasons that weren't fully integrated, right? That he was doing it because he was taught to do that. And so that would mean that there were things that, not that that's bad that he was taught to do that, but you understand what I mean. It hadn't been his choice.
Right. It's more of a following thing as opposed to an established thing.
Yes.
Or a revelation.
What the structure he's in is telling him he should do, he's trying to follow the structure.
Emotionalism. We call that emotionalism.
Mm.
He felt emotional towards it and not guided or led.
100%.
You know what I want to do is I want to go back a little too, and I want to generalize a relationship now. I know Gonzo didn't like that, but I want to generalize a relationship from my point of view. Okay, this is one of the things I've noticed in the manosphere that is looked down upon. And to me, when I'm with my woman, the woman I'm with, we'll say the woman I'm with, I like that passion. I like that romance. I like to clink a wine glass. I like to pull my woman close and dance with her, you know, slow dance with her. But I enjoy that. That's something I think all men enjoy. And to me, in a relationship, whether you're married, whether you're dating, that is so important. And I don't think that's talked about a lot. And it's the thing to where, like, let's say you're being with your significant other at this point. Is that a manosphere term? So should I not say that? Significant other? You know, it's all these triggers.
When you're with your plate, Tony.
Yeah, your plate. But but I enjoy that, and I enjoy the feedback that you get from that. To me, that's real important. And that's what I don't see in a lot of relationships. You know, we'll say a date here that I was on, and I'll say recently, let me just say that. But we actually looked at the people that were around us, the other couples, and we were having a great time. But the other couples were on their phones. They looked like shit. They had scrappy t-shirts on. They just looked miserable. And it was funny of our observation when we were sitting there enjoying ourselves to observe other people. And I can't do that. I just can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's just me, but I think that's part of keeping the fire burning, whether you're dating, whether you're married, whether it's even like I said, like it's I don't want to say a casual relationship, but somebody you're just getting to know. But that passion, that desire, that romance. Now, look, don't get me wrong here. I think attraction is at a primal level, period. I don't think you can change that. And that's my opinion on that. I think attraction is initially physical, for sure. So, but keeping that fire burning in any kind of context is, in the manosphere, I think, is really looked down upon. So you're not doing anything. What is the phrase for the explicit whatever of a woman? I'm sure you've heard that, you know, for her joy or to make her happy, which I think is a really bad way to look at that. But when we go back to the beginning with energy, and I think it takes time as a man or anybody else to understand that energy. You know, being 58 years old, I can tell when there's a good energy. When you pull a woman close to you and she responds, to me, that's a beautiful thing. No matter of the circumstance, or, you know, I could be here in my home and, you know, cooking dinner, and you have that whole energy is just flowing.
Yeah,
I think the atmosphere tries to break us away from that, push us away from that.
Well, everything in the world is becoming materialist.
Mm-hmm.
And materialism, I mean, the more materialist you get, the more that you ignore these basic truths. I love that. I love the way you described it, Tony, because I think it's going to be accessible. I mean, I am very sensitive to energy, and so I'll often talk about it in a way that I feel like people can't relate to fully. Maybe I go too far ahead with it. But when you say stuff like, you can feel like the pull between you and this girl, or you can feel that this couple didn't like each other or they were in a fight, you can feel that, you know, that is energy. I mean, you're feeling an energetic dynamic there. So, I mean, do you need a randomized trial to try to determine whether or not, oh, where's your source that they're having relationship problems? Where's your source? You know, it's like fucking, this is where that sort of conversation goes, where people are like, well, how can you prove that the energy? It's like, fuck off. Like, get in touch a little bit with your humanity, get in touch a little bit with like just being a human in general, and you can actually sense some of these things. But yeah, it goes to very large extremes, to the extent, you know, if you were walking in a bad part of town, you can feel the energies a little bit different when you're walking down the street. You're like, something's not right here. I mean, we have this capacity. It's a whole different topic of conversation, but we have this capacity. It's been mostly suppressed. But it's huge. It's huge in relationships. And a healthy relationship, you will feel that they have a healthy relationship. You will feel the energy between the couple. You'll feel the love between the couple. Even in a fight, you'll feel the love between the couple. Like, it's there underneath whatever veneer is happening. I don't know I think I jumped in there, but
it makes a lot. It makes sense.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, because we go back to energy, and like I said, I as a man, I enjoy that, and there's a lot of men say they don't enjoy that. but I think it's kind of a wall. You know, it's funny because I have a note here about how men and women build a wall. That was one of the things that in your talks that you talked about. And that's to me, that's part of building a wall, is not experiencing that. And as a man, you want to experience that romance, that passion. I think that's really important.
Well, yeah. To sort of reintegrate that with the prior conversation, these guys have, after being broken, the blue pill broke them, right? Now they got the red pill and they got some sort of, basic little structure put together. They got like a couple Legos that have put themselves back together. I'm not trying to be a dick. I shouldn't be a dick about this stuff because we've all gone through this.
Yeah.
I do want to be compassionate, but there is just an element of frustration with guys who have gotten broken and who literally get themselves put back together, and then they feel like that's it. It's like, you didn't really learn the lesson. You didn't really learn the fundamental lesson here. You're afraid to feel something from a girl because you're afraid of being broken again. Full stop. Because a woman will break you again.
Mm-hmm.
Even if she doesn't leave you, she will break you. If you experience love, your form is weakened. But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that breaking, even if it's a bad woman, frankly, you can still rebuild yourself. But with a good woman, it's like, this piece isn't in the right place. I'm going to take this one out. Let's put this one here instead. It's not like you actually collapsed entirely. It's that you have someone puts the scaffolding up and simply does a couple of renovations. But they're really so afraid of being broken again by a woman, being broken again, and that's it. That's the fundamental thing. It's about fear. It's about consciousness. It's not that they have the wrong idea about society. It's not that they don't understand aspects of women. It's not that they understand that the system is against them. The system is against them. The laws aren't fair. All that stuff's true. And do you want to have a good life or not? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because you can mitigate the damages, first off, but second off, that's how you grow as an individual. That's how you become stronger. And the most successful men never have these conversations. I just want to emphasize that they never have these conversations. And so you have to ask yourself on a meta level, if this is stuff that you're obsessed with, where are you putting yourself in the pecking order?
Do you think I mean, I look as like in the manosphere, you guys don't want to get involved anymore. And that's, I think there's so many different movements of MGTOW right now. There's like extreme MGTOW, never want to be with a woman again. But isn't it weak that you don't want you're so afraid of getting hurt that you're not willing to accept another woman into your life? To me, that's kind of weak.
I mean, I agree. And I don't want, I want the guys who are like that, who are hearing this stuff. This is tough love in its own sense.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, I'm gonna say something that I hope is going to reach these guys. There has never been a great man in history who has not taken risks. Never. Never. I mean, and we're not just talking about, well, she might leave me, or she might, maybe it's worse. She might divorce rape me and I'm going to lose a lot of money. We're talking about guys who literally are like, I'm going to get my leg blown off by a cannonball.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the essence of the masculine, as a man, you are on your edge. And the more you're on your edge throughout your life, the greater of a man you are. That's it. Full stop. If you, after risking and taking some winnings, most guys don't risk at all, and they have a very small pool, and then that's why they're dead by 30, 35. They're dead. And then their lives become some sort of element of just trying to care for, maybe they shacked up with somebody. I'm not being, they could have a good marriage or everything. Their ambition may not be super high, but the point is that they know that they're off their edge, and their focus immediately becomes their children. Now, I love my daughter and future sons, future children, all about it. But I mean, there's not a moment where I'm like, I got a kid now it's time for me to get off my edge. Never crossed my mind once. If anything, it's like, I want to really show them what you really can be. I mean, maybe there's a little element of like the super youth recklessness. That's not a bad thing. That's not the same thing as risking. It's like the difference between going out in a battle and like just sticking up your head for the sake of it, like a young guy would do.
I've got somebody who wants to join. His name is Woody Johnson. I'm not sure if this is a troll, but I'm going to bring him on real quick. So you're going to have to identify yourself, Woody Johnson. You're going to have to do it real quick.
Can you hear me, Tony?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm from the MD stream, but started watching you.
Okay.
I'm usually on the MD stream, so I'm not a troll.
Okay.
Good. Just started watching you afterwards. Good. So yeah,
good.
Pleasure to I guess be talking to you guys.
Okay, good. Any input on what we're talking about? Meet Pat Stetson, meet Gonzo, Primal Man, and good to meet you.
Good to meet you, Woody.
I started listening to you, Tony, a couple shows, so to be honest, I'm kind of more on the, because the guys from MD stream last time, came on the show, Caduceus and Hold the Truth. Caduceus, stated that the most powerful thing you can give to, let's say, a country, if you're a patriot or anything, is your seed. If you're, it's your kids. And I know you stated that's kind of, weak. I guess going your own way, kind of MGTOWish way type of thing. I got, a lot of my ideologies.
I didn't say it was weak. I think what I actually meant is that a man doesn't want to take a chance because he's afraid of getting hurt. To me, that's a weakness. You follow what I'm saying? As men, we shouldn't be afraid of being hurt. It's being hurt is what I was specifically talking about.
I understand. You did make it more clear. I do hear you. My only thing is, if I invest in bad stocks, I lose. I know the limit that I'm going to lose. And for example, if I, like every other guy, I don't have a problem with women. I just kind of chose, to go my own way. I had, girlfriends, relationship, whatever, nothing too long, but I never really had that problem. But for me, courting a woman was in a way kind of being, I felt like I had to be the charming one, I had to be the funny one. And knowing how the laws are these days, if you are married to somebody, if you're worth anything, states involved in it, and it's a lose-lose situation for a guy, because I'm pretty sure you guys wouldn't go into a state binding legal contract with somebody that that can leave anytime, and it's your responsibility to pay them the benefits and whatever happens with the company. I think that's also the real main issue too in today's day and age.
I know MD has brought this up though, but that is all on the man. MD had said this himself. It is a contract. So if you do dive into that contract, it's like when you buy a car, you have to pay for it. I think that's the analogy that he gave. So it's your job as a man, this is my opinion, to understand that contract. And I understand if somebody can't dive into that contract. I do. I mean, I get that 100%, because of laws and all sorts of restrictions and things that are put on the man. We know that it's stacked against the man for sure. But what I don't want is somebody to lose out a lifetime of good things that they could have with that fear. And I understand the whole thought process that you're going through. Pat, do you want to respond to this?
Yeah. I totally get it. And I just want to preface all of this stuff by saying that I don't think anybody here agrees that the laws are fair. I mean, the laws are bullshit. They're totally biased against men. That's a reality. And if we're going to be really fair, we can also say that they were in many ways biased against women 50 something years ago. I know that a lot of guys are going to get triggered by that comment, but I have family who was in those kind of relationships, and let's just say that behavior of men hasn't always been well, and not taken away from the current reality. The current reality is the opposite direction. It's abusive towards men. Okay, the pendulum just goes one way to the other. We haven't quite gotten to that proper middle. Put all that stuff aside. A lot of what guys talk about and they fixate on divorce statistics. I'm not even going to talk about, we could talk about fear consciousness. We could talk about the benefits of putting yourself out there, which we were discussing. But I just want to make a point about the statistics themselves. 70% of divorces are initiated by women, right? We know that. But what I have to ask guys is why they continue to define themselves by the average. The statistics are correct on a macro level, but out of every man who's been married, what does each man look like differently? Is there a difference between the marriages that are successful and the marriages that are not? Why are we generalizing? Oh, it's just simply you got married, therefore you got 70% chance the girl's going to leave you. Or that's not the exact, but you know what I mean. It's like over 50% of marriages end up in divorce, right? And over 70% of those divorces are initiated by women. So you have this statistic that people put out there. But the truth is that if you're aware of yourself and you're aware of women, if you exercise discernment, what are your actual odds of a divorce happening? Why did those 70% of women leave their men? I'm sure a lot of it was ego. A lot of it was their own bullshit. That they could do it, that they could get away with it. But how was the man showing up in that relationship? Nobody asked these questions. Nobody's asking these questions. And this is like, the kind of like bullshit you see in the media when they talk about like this number of deaths happen. We have this number of positive tests. It's the same shit. I'm not doing again that stuff, but it's the same shit. It's abusive statistics. You can't control divorce, but the truth is that you should see a divorce coming. You should see it coming. I mean, these guys who are like, I was blindsided by her. How the fuck were you blindsided? Take some responsibility. She wasn't fucking you for a couple of years. She didn't like to spend any time around you. She treated you badly. And then I was blindsided by the fact that she was cheating. Come on, get your fucking head out of your ass. Take some responsibility. You were on autopilot in your marriage. You were afraid of dealing with the issues. And so she had an affair or she left you. And now you're trying to be a victim. Well, you are and you aren't. If a guy is aware, first off, his chances of divorce, super minimal. Like ridiculously minimal. He's going to get divorced because he wants it. Okay? It's not going to happen because he was blindsided by it. And second off, if it happens, he's going to have the tools to be able to build himself back. That's it. But the first point is what I really want to focus on here, because guys are so afraid of this stuff. Like, if you understand this, if you understand how women work, if you understand how yourself works, if you're in the red pill or whatever, you shouldn't be afraid, because the point of this stuff, I thought, was to make you less afraid, to inoculate you. But it seems like it's actually making people more afraid, that it's actually giving people a sense of, hey, I can handle it. That's not good.
Woody? Woody?
Did you guys, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're good, man.
You're on mute.
So sorry about that. You know,
Right.
I'm also driving. I know it was a little bro body. That's why. Well, you know, I get what you're saying. You know that, oh, it's, you know, and you know everything related to, you know, knowing yourself and all. But it's, to me, it's simply that, you know, that now that.
Oh, crap. I was waiting to hear. Well, he'll jump back on.
Yeah, he'll jump back on. He's driving right now. But it was a good question. I'm honestly, I really respect that he would ask it. I mean, it's an important thing to get brought up and addressed. But
it's a really tough one, because, you know, again, you know, maybe I triggered him with saying that, yeah, is it being weak that you're afraid to be hurt again? And to me, as a man, you know, like you had said earlier, that hurt is a learning process, and you should actually grow from it. Okay, but you know, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So, but that's where the change has to be made in yourself, not right. Correct.
100%. And I think that another piece here, and maybe this is expanding the conversation a bit, but I think it's important, is that a lot of these, maybe I'm making an assumption here, but I don't think it's a wrong assumption, that a lot of the guys who bring this stuff up are more in middle or kind of working class situations. And maybe there's like a fixed income aspect, that they only make a certain amount of money, and maybe their wife wasn't working, right? And so when the divorce happens, it actually is, under that context, an absolutely devastating blow to their financial situation. I mean, there's not this sort of sense that the quality of their life is severely impacted by the results of the laws. And I think that that's by design. There's a reason that most of these families that are broken are happening at the lower the income you go, the more that's the case. And I wonder how many of the guys who are putting this stuff out there, maybe it's from personal experience, are guys who have really, like, it has really wrecked their lives. And, you know, we can talk about on a higher level about don't be afraid, it's all about growth. But there's that practical considerations, like, yeah, you can talk about that, but I lost my house. And now, you know, I'm like living in like a shithole apartment, and I'm paying half my salary to some bitch who cheated on me. I mean, that's a pretty much in your face. And I don't think I'm the guy that's best at, like, if that's your sort of orientation, but I really do have compassion for it, and I understand the perspective that it comes from. And I stand by the fact that if you're a young guy who hasn't gone through that and you're listening to this stuff, I just want it to be understood. First off, you don't have to marry her legally if you don't want to. But if you have kids, it's going to be the same deal, and it doesn't matter. The laws aren't messed up when it comes to child support so much. That's the first thing. But
respond to that.
Pat
doesn't have kids.
Pat probably doesn't have kids. I do have a kid. I do have a kid. Yeah, I have a child.
Andy has a very successful growing marriage, we'll call it, you know.
Yeah.
I've seen their interaction with his wife, and it is a beautiful thing to see, for sure. So
Yeah. And look, I'm not the kind of person here who's like, yeah, it's just perfect. It's a perfect marriage. No, we have issues. We have a little spat here and there. Whatever. I mean, it's real though. It's real. I mean, the connection's real. The understanding of each other's weird. I mean, we've gone through some stuff. You know, we came to the brink. But even aside from the financial stuff, the point here is just the statistics are not what you think. They're not what you think if you have the awareness. If you understand, if you're self-aware, if you are paying attention, you are not at a 50% risk of divorce. That is not your reality. If you are not aware, your risk of divorce is also not 50%. It's 80%.
you talked about this today on your stream, on your live stream, if I'm correct. And that was today, right? Because I listened to all your stuff. But, you know, basically what you're saying is I think what's happened is we see a statistic and we get frightened by it.
Sure.
And we're throwing ourselves into that category. Like the last thing anybody wants to be. I mean, nobody, does anybody want to be a statistic? We've all heard that phrase before.
Sure.
I don't want to be a statistic. So what you're telling people is that when you have that awareness, and I'm going to guess that, like, I like what you said before too, about you really did see it coming, but you ignored it and you did nothing about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, and I don't want to knock on a guy who was truly blindsided, because I don't want to say I know people that were blindsided. And that word right there is also a trigger, blindsided, because how do I say this?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do I say this? Chances are there was hints of what's going on, and it was ignored usually.
I mean, I can look back at relationship where debatably, I mean, I was cheated on or it was close to it, doesn't really matter. I was certainly getting branch swung, and it was extremely, at this point in my awareness, it's like obvious. Like I can point out with clients in 2 seconds. Like I can see the signs, and I also understand that they may have to go through this stuff. They may need to move through some things, right? But the point here is that, yeah, the signs are there. Now, the obvious, retort is, well, how do you get to the point where you have that level of awareness in practical situation? Like it's all well to say this, like, well, if you just have awareness, you got it. But, well, what is the sufficient amount of awareness? And that's a good point. But, I mean, that's your responsibility as a man. Do your due diligence. Do as much as you possibly can. And maybe you're with a girl and you start to get burned, and you learn more from that process. Nothing is risk-free. But, I mean, we go back to the other thing, which is that nothing good is risk-free. Like you can live. I don't like to take this point, but I do think it's important for the sake of the self-awareness. And I'm just going to ask it as a question. If you consider this stuff to not be a good investment, and if you're really done with women, you think it's like, I don't want women, it's not worth the ROI. Why are you on the live stream? Why do you watch any of these videos? Like, why aren't you just kind of completely dissociated from this entire community? Unconsciously, these guys really aren't. I mean, unconsciously, they do want connection with women, which is why they will continue to come back and make mention of the issues why we can't connect with them. And in their defense, I think that they have a really valid voice, and that perspective is important. and it's important to be communicated because society doesn't hear that. At the same time, you can't say it comes from an empowering, self-empowering perspective to continue to go with it. I have more faith in man's resilience. I believe that these guys can get through it. They can get through the heartbreak. They can get through, if they get to this higher level. I believe that guys can get to the higher level. They can get there. But my focus is on working with guys who do really believe that for themselves and they want to get there. If you want to get there, you can get there. That's the paradox. If you don't believe you can get there, you won't.
There's a lot of part in the men's community that doesn't hold men accountable. It's always the woman's fault. And the accountability, to me, will always fall on the man. Not always, but a lot of the part, because you didn't see those precursors to your divorce. So there is a certain amount of accountability that has to go back to you. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't want anybody to think that I don't hold a woman accountable also for her actions. If you're in a marriage, yeah, I think that when you do get married, it's her obligation also to make that marriage work. Now, you had said, Pat, today, I think it was on a stream, to where, how did you put it, when it wasn't taking advice from a woman, but I guess taking advice from your wife. In other words, it's okay for her to give you a kick in the ass when you need it. Correct?
Yeah. So this is, I mean, people, the funny thing about this, Tony, it's almost like, do I even talk about these things? Mm-hmm. Because to what extent are the guys listening in the place to receive it? Because mm-hmm. It sounds like a lot of the propaganda that's thrown at us. And that's what they do, is that they'll say, just be yourself, and, you guys should just communicate with each other. But then the man communicates and says, what the fuck is wrong with you? And they're like, no, don't communicate like that. Don't communicate like that. That's not good communication. That's abusive. You can't talk to her like that. You're just supposed to communicate your feelings. Like, well, sorry. Communication is conflict. So when I talk about where my relationship is and what we have, we communicate, but we communicate because there's been a lot of truth exchanged. And it hasn't always been pretty. It's not the sort of propaganda which is like designed to gaslight guys into not actually communicating how they feel. Right? It's like, communicate how you feel. I think you're a fucking bitch. No, don't. I'm not saying you actually communicate with a woman like that crassly. I don't think it's productive. But the point is to express how you actually feel, to express anger, to express, that can be very necessary at times in the relationship. So, okay, what's the point? So, talk about that. I will ask my wife for her opinion. Well, I asked her for her opinion because she's smart and she understands me. So I ask her for my opinion. I don't ask her for her opinion because, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Please make the decision. I don't ask her for that reason.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I'm in this situation. This is what I think. What do you think?
What do you think? Yep.
And then she'll tell me, and I'll be like, you have a good point here. Like, for instance, and if you guys haven't noticed already from this show, probably one of the worst traits I have. It's very difficult. I'm a little condescending. And sometimes
I don't notice that at all, actually.
Well, I work on it, but
I don't think it's condescending. I think it's truth.
I work on it. But I can. What I'm trying to say, Tony, is that I'm not triggered at all here. But if I'm in a situation with somebody, if I have an issue with somebody, I can become very condescending.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm good at being condescending. So it's like, so it's like, it's difficult, you know, when you're good at something negative to like, so, you know, I had some sort of issue with someone I had to resolve, and I wanted to resolve it. And there were consequences to me, you know, engaging poorly. And I just mentioned sort of how I was expecting to approach the situation. And I asked for her feedback, and she gave me it, and she gave me good feedback because she understands me. And she said, well, even when you said this, that this was like condescending towards him. I was like, yeah, you're right. It was condescending towards him. Like, I thought I was being diplomatic, but I was actually being condescending, you know? So it was like the point that, not to get into the weeds with this stuff, but this is, you want to get to the point in a relationship where you can ask that, but it's all about what is the actually underlying dynamic. You know, I'll just say one more thing with this topic. Donald Trump asked everybody their opinion. He would go and he'd ask servers their opinion. Say, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? He would always ask for people's opinion. He has to make a decision. But doesn't mean that you don't ask for other people's opinion. You actually will make a good decision when you have an informed opinion. So as a good leader, you would think that you would want the person who has your best interest at heart. If you have a good relationship, your wife is as much in your corner as anybody possibly could be, because every win you have reflects positively on her. So she wants everything to be good for you if you have a healthy relationship. So why would you not ask her perspective? Doesn't mean you can't also ask other people involved, but anyway, get the point.
Woody, any response?
And hey, Tony, I wasn't triggered. I actually like your show, but you know, you guys are good guys, and yeah, I have nothing you know, bad to say. And again, I'm adding into discussion. You know, I'm just asking you know, a couple questions. You know, with you guys, and you know, I do appreciate, you know, I think it's a Pat. I think it's the name. Yeah,
Pat.
You know, his input. Yes, sir. His input on this too. You know, and it's good. We're having a conversation regarding this. You know, I'm pretty sure, you know, a lot of guys have the, you know, same thoughts going through their head. Now, regarding, you know, talking, you know, and stuff, and I get that, you know, yeah, you got to be a little politer with, you know, women. You know, it's is it okay if I go back to, because before I dropped off, or should we continue with?
Go ahead, Woody. Yeah.
Okay. So you know, I do understand. You know, I'm not disagreeing with you. You know, regarding everything that you just said. You know, off of my question. You know, in the end, if you do think about it, regardless if you're making any money or not, you know, the system is against you in a way. You know, and women throughout all of history, you know, regardless of how bad things would get, women were always better off. Most of women's genes have been passed on, you know, compared to guys. I think we didn't really have good numbers. Most of men today, and even throughout history, you know, did not probably pass their genes on. You know, it was probably few of the guys that were lucky enough, you know, to reproduce, have kids, you know, in a way. And still today, a lot of, so many of the percentage of guys, you know, men would still not pass it on, but women would. And I would argue that, you know, that women will always, regardless of what the world is, if it's a Mad Max world, if it's, you know, cyberpunk, you know, or whatever, women would still be way better off, you know. And guys, I understand guys have to take responsibilities. That's why I would never get married, even though, you know, I want to, but, you know, if she has the ability to do that for me, regardless of whatever, you know, if things were fair, if you know, United States actually had fair laws, you know, I don't think, you know, anybody would be opposed to that, you know. And I want, you know, I say good luck to you guys, whoever has kids, you know, are married. I hope you know, families, you know, are stay together. You know, I do not have any bad intentions in my heart regarding that. But just how the things are, signing a contract in a way that I don't think would ever settle down, regardless of how. I'm a very loving person. I don't think I would have a problem on if I do decide to marry somebody and not giving them enough love or whatever. I can be bitter. I like to, I do like to stay alone a lot of times, but in the end, if a woman decides to, get rid of me for whatever reason, and she has every avenue of leaving me and still being able to be okay, and me losing most of whatever I've worked all my life for, it's like, how it would never make sense to me kind of going into that. Because even if I have kids, I'm the type of guy I want 100% custody of my kids if things were fair enough. But that would be a fighting battle on my side. She would by default get the kids. I'm that type of person. I mean, what's your input? What do you guys have an input on this?
Well, I was gonna ask you, do you like, have you considered removing all of those incentives for the woman to do this? Like, these women have the option, but why not take away the option for them to do that? I'm not talking legally. I mean just entirely bypassing all of that incentive for them to take all of your assets.
Do you mean like the common law marriage? Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Well, as far as Texas, I lived a little bit in Texas before. I mean, not a little, but common law is I think considered as a married couple after a certain time. I think it's the same though, no?
I think it depends on what state you're in.
Well, yeah, it depends on your state. But if you're in Texas, there, and now citation needed on this, obviously, but you don't.
Yep.
The benefits are not really there. If you do the common law marriage thing, there may be, I don't know, in some weird way. I don't know.
Woody, how old are you?
Yeah.
I'm, older 20s, lower 30s.
All right, good. You're young. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
What I don't want to see somebody that could have something really good lose that. I really don't. I don't want to see somebody that, even when Scribe was on Primal Man, I think it was Monday night. I'm not sure if it was my show or his show, but he had talked about, everybody kind of came to a kind of an agreement at the end of that show. That was your show, right, Gene?
Yeah, it was my show.
Yeah, I mean, it's really what everybody wants, but I think it's the route to which you get there. I think is important.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I would say, even with the common law, like taking away, I don't want to take anything away from anybody. I think we should all, I don't think we're all equal, obviously, but even if let's say, for example, if okay, you guys go your separate ways, there's no alimony or child support, whoever, both sides are, both sides, if they want, they could either fight in court, which it wouldn't be the route I would take, or agree upon, I guess having custody depending on whatever they want to do. Like I said, I personally, if I have kids, I want 100% custody. A mom can come see my kids if she, that's what I would do. But, let's say, if there's a equal representation in family court. By the way, in family court, you as a guy really don't have any rights. They don't have to follow the amendments. It's really nasty, especially for men. But if it was like, okay, both sides, whoever, no matter how much a fee a guy or a woman would make, they have to get their own representation, fight their own for the custody battle, or decide themselves. There would be a lot more incentive for, I guess, not having families break up and actually loving and sharing your kids. For like thousands of years, you invest everything in your family. A guy was there, has a protection of the house, and female would be social, take care of the kids, take care of the house. It's been like that for thousands of years or so, but now there's every incentive for a female to put you on whatever she want to do with you and take the kids. All she has to do, hey, he's sexually abusing the kids, or he's abusive to the kids, and you can't even see your kids. That is something I do internalize a lot of things, especially, these experiences and the stories that I do here. I think of it as what would happen to me, if I was going through situations. If you guys talk about a bad story or things like that, I would be like, okay, how would I feel?
But
I
Woody,
think that's the.
it sounds like you've already established how you would feel.
Hmm. Yeah, I would feel horrible. I don't know what I would do, but I definitely would be horrible, and I mean, I'm pretty.
If you like ice cream and someone told you, hey, vanilla ice cream's horrible, don't try it. Are you just gonna say, yeah, vanilla ice cream is horrible, I'm not gonna try it, Or would you at least say, hey, look, let me navigate this and do it?
Well, I hope I don't die, in a month or even there after trying vanilla ice cream. If there's no, if there's no heavy damage to myself, I think I would try any flavor that sounds or looks good.
Being a man is about risk and hardships. That's what it's about.
I agree.
You'll never avoid that ever as a man.
I agree.
And then again, that's why we're here. Is we're trying to figure out solutions. I think it was MD had brought up. I'm not sure if it was the interview I did with him, but he had brought up where it was. I'm not sure which state it was, but the guy had kids with a woman, and he had a paternity test, and that was not his kids, and he still had to pay child support. But the guy actually had the law changed. I don't know what state it was in. So he actually had the law changed. So he did something about it. He actually made a difference. It took him 10 years, I believe, to do that, but he did that. So we can always look at the bad things, but I think looking for solutions. And I'm not saying you're looking at the bad things. You're living off your experiences, which everybody has to do.
Right.
So I think that. In fact, it was Primal Man's last stream where when MD was talking about his book and he was questioned on it, it was he wrote the book from his experiences. And I think what's happened now is we all Google everything. And so when we see something on the internet, a statistic or whatever, we have to believe it. We have to have all this information. But the best thing in life is your experience. That's your best tool. That's your best tool to learn. But every experiences are different. So.
Woody, I know a lot of guys who have gone through divorce, rape, gone through terrible situations with that, and their lives are better afterwards. They're actually better afterwards. Now, and if you were to ask these guys, they would pretty much say, I mean, none of them think the laws are fair. None of them think what happened to them was fair. But they didn't let it control their future, and the result is that they're in a better place than the woman. A lot of them have started new businesses, and the pressure has forced them to grow as individuals and to become stronger. And they look at themselves when they got divorced and they're like, they were at such a lower level of consciousness. So what I would say to you, I mean, I could dig into a lot of things in your story and
I agree with you.
What causes you to sort of gravitate to these things. I really respect the fact that you're on here and you're bringing these questions to us, because you're speaking for millions of guys out there right now. Millions of guys have the exact same sentiment as you. And so
I appreciate you guys too.
It is. I would encourage you, though, as a man, you can do things to mitigate this legally if you feel like it's important to you, but on a fundamental level, look at the results of the guys who believe that, yeah, it's unfair, but whatever. Like, I'm going to do my due diligence. I feel confident in being able to handle adversity, and life is an adventure. Look at the consciousness of those guys and what their outcomes are, and then look at the consciousness of guys who are like, this could hurt me. I could get ruined by this. If I do this, other bad things could happen, and look at their outcomes. And ultimately, as a young man, you have a choice of what type of consciousness you want to embody. This is not a thing saying just go marry a girl because so what, you know, it doesn't matter. It's not what we're saying. It's just that you obviously want to have that kind of connection with a woman. You shouldn't be so afraid of them. They're not that scary at the end of the day. Once you understand them, they're actually pretty simple, to be honest. So they're very
I'm not. Go ahead.
No, I'm done. Go ahead, man.
It's not about being afraid. I don't fear, you know, anything or anybody. It's more like that, you know, if something like that does happen to me, it's gonna be very devastating for me, you know, regardless of. I do agree that, you know, yeah, I mean, I would have to continue, but you know, if I have kids with somebody, if I invest so much of my time, if you know, if I do everything right, and in the end things don't work out, you know, like I said, it would be, you know, very devastating for me, losing my kids, you know, wife going away, you know, whatever happens after to me, you know, it's just, that would be, you know, just a huge, you know, it's like, that's why and it's not being afraid, you know, like I said, I don't think any man is really afraid of any women. It's just that, you know, they they know what's the chance of happening. And I know I'm generalizing, you know, but hey, you know, I do think of everything logically and as scientifically accurately as I can. And shows like you guys, you know, the manosphere, I did learn a lot from this, you know. And I personally, you know, find fulfillment. The I guess the the power, the source for me comes from within. I do not, you know, I do not need fulfillment from a female or from, you know, friends or anything external. You know, for me, and I think which would be a great advice for everybody, that, you know, the power, the motivation, the drive should come from within,
Mhm.
instead of, you know, your dog, your kids, your wife, your status, your social, you know, whatever it is. You know, that's how I, you know, that's how I got after, you know, getting so much knowledge from, you know, the manosphere.
Well, Woody, do I have permission to be very direct with you? I'm
Oh,
not there anymore.
sure
So,
you do. Go ahead.
guess I don't. No, I respect him so much for coming on here. But I mean, the fear is obviously there.
Mhm.
It's obviously there. I mean, because it's like I don't have any fear, but this would just devastate me if this happened. Well, you're afraid of that happening, then, because
Do you think it's possible that like a man in his situation hasn't experienced that real primal love and affection and knowing when it's right or when it's wrong?
you know, it's tough to say whether they haven't experienced it or whether they've experienced it and something negative happened to them,
Mhm.
and then they're afraid of experiencing it again. It could be either of them. It could be either of the two things. But the point basically just is, if you're not afraid of it, I don't actually, and I mention this not because it's like you're afraid. No, I think it's fine to be afraid of it.
Mhm.
It's legitimate fear. But the first step is acknowledging you're afraid of it. I mean, if you're saying, I'm not afraid of it, but, you know, if it happened to me, it would just destroy my life. And, you know, don't you think that we have to be careful? Because it's like, well, you're afraid of it because it's obviously consuming your thinking. You're like, I won't get married because of this stuff because it would devastate my life, but I'm not afraid. You know, no, you're afraid. It's okay to be afraid. Say, I am afraid of falling in love with a woman and her leaving me and getting fucked by a bad system. There's no shame in admitting that. But the first step is admitting it. Because if you don't admit it, then you're not going to actually grow. You're not going to be able to move through it. Otherwise, it just becomes this sort of circular thing. Like, well, I'd be okay with it if this happened or if this happened. Well, you can find, the reality is that it's like we're going to like try to find the exact state and district where it's okay to be with a woman a little bit more. Yeah, and Jay Neptune is right here in the sense that they don't know how to vet women, and that is, I'm happy you mentioned that last sentence, because that is the real point here, which is that if you knew how to vet women, you would not be afraid. But the focus shouldn't be on, once you understand that the system's unfair, and once you understand what women are capable of, your next response shouldn't be, well, I guess that's it. Like, yeah, you should be cautious, and then how do I vet women? And really focus on, how do I vet women? And if you do that, you can date for 2 years. And if you do that consciously, you won't ever have to worry about that happening. And I don't want to say you don't have to ever even worry about divorce happening, but you don't have to worry about being devastated by divorce if it happens. But your chances of divorce are also way, way, way lower. And that is what's really important here. It is about vetting women. It's 100% about vetting women. But then how are you supposed to vet women?
I mean, doesn't it go back? We kind of get full circle now, because doesn't it go back to kind of what we started at the beginning, which is energy, connection, and understanding that energy and connection. And I think if you understand, like what we talked about at the beginning, is the energy and the connection, that's part of the vetting. And that when you know when the energy is right and the connection is right, it's not going to be a mistake. I mean, that's my opinion.
100%. And to be fair to the audience, it's probably not, the material details that they're fully looking for with it. Mm-hmm. The reason that a lot of guys fixate on the virginity question is because they can't vet. And so they look for things that are proxies. So they'll say, well, I can't figure out women, but if her parents are together and she's a virgin, then I'm probably okay. Right? Because I looked at some statistics and this said, this. So now my odds have dropped. Versus what we're talking about here from an energetic perspective, an intuitive perspective, and saying, well, this is how she feels. She feels this, and this is such a big trap. So let's just try to be a little bit more practical for the guys here. Let's just try to be a little bit more practical for the guys here, which is that if you've dated women, you can understand when they are, you can see a girl's pulling back. So why is she pulling back? Okay, what's going on here? What's going on in her psyche? What happened with her? Like, I would really encourage guys to ask more questions, to do more, to try to be really curious about who the girl is. Not like interrogating her, like, give me all these factual details about your life, but really trying to understand who is the girl who I'm with. And to bring this full circle, Tony, is that this is the emotional range we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Because if a guy is emotionally aware of a woman and is like, I want to connect with a woman, I want to find out who she is, but he's grounded enough in his masculine to also be able to assess her, it's not, you really don't have much to worry about here. And it's a process that, look, you can work with me if you want to work with me. I mean, there are guys who can take you through this if you want to, but you could do it yourself if you are willing to really put the work in to pay attention. But you have to want it. I mean, I think that anybody can learn anything. And any man can certainly learn about women if he really wants to. My concern is that a lot of the guys are more concerned with seeing what's wrong and not trying to figure out how to fix it, not trying to figure out what the solution is. And you mentioned this, Tony, when you mentioned that guy, 10 years he had to pay for another man's kid.
Mhm.
So look for a solution. You actually try to change the law. That's one way of trying to fix a situation. But there's also the sense of, can I take responsibility for my own life and for my own outcomes? There's a bridge here. You have to choose to cross it. I don't think we can convince guys to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's their own choice. But they should know that the people on the other side don't think about these things. And they don't think about these things out of ignorance. They don't think about these things because it's a problem solved. It's a problem overcome.
Well, I'm going to say with Gonzo's avatar that she's never yours. It's just your return.
Dude, I was seeing that and I was like, what is a troll? Big troll going on here.
Pat, instead of trying to build them a bridge or throw them a rope, let's just throw them a football. Maybe they'll throw it back.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. I like that, Gene. That's a good one.
It's a really
Let me bring
good
it
You
back
just
down.
got to
Woody?
be careful because you'll end up in hypurgatory.
Yeah, you don't want to be.
Hypurgatory.
Yeah. Hypurgatory is a tough place to be.
I'm just busting their balls. That's all.
And look, we got Rolo on.
Yeah. Just remember.
Hypergamy.
Yeah.
She's not yours. It's just your turn.
All right, look at the avatars.
Do you know who I am? How old are you, brother?
Hey, Rolo, I hear you getting the band back together.
Band of winners.
On me, Rolo?
Hypergamy. Hypergamy. That's all I have to say.
I'm getting in my new car.
All you actually really do have to say. And again, Rolo and Cooper. I mean, I know these guys personally, and I know they've done work where it has helped men, and I'm sure it has saved a few lives. And I will not, we can joke about it, but I will never take that from them ever.
Yeah.
One thing I will never do. So, but Woody, we're going to wrap up here shortly. Any final words?
No, great talk. I recently, like I said, found your show, Tony, and you guys are good guys, and like I said, it's a process. You're learning all your life, so a lot of my knowledge, dealing with in life and situations. I get that. I got a lot of that from the manosphere. I'm on the edge in a way, I would say, because I did start off, like Alex Jones really got me into this stuff, and then. Dude, like Alex Jones, if anything alpha or whatever you would say, it's that Napoleon complex, that Alex Jones is. A great guy, but too much for me, I guess. But, now I'm on the edge, I guess, of the manosphere, and I do like it over here.
And that's good. You know what? It's like what happens is, I think in the manosphere is people grab onto an ideology and they stick to it. When I think a lot of this stuff needs to be a tool in your toolbox to give you a better life. And that's the most important thing. And even small streams like mine, we can talk about this and look for solutions to all sorts of things. Like tonight's main topic was how to keep that fire burning in a relationship. And that's one thing that people don't talk about. There's a lot of the manosphere is talking about, how to get women, how to pick up women. Okay, well, you got guys on the panel here that, that's not an issue with me. I think it's, for me, it's, I date. So it's not even keeping the woman, but for me, I believe I know how to keep that fire burning. And I think that's important. And I'm not perfect at it. I'll give you that by any means. But I think that's an important topic that people don't talk about is how to keep that relationship going. And as men, what can we do to make it better for other men that are in a relationship? These topics are not breached a lot in the manosphere.
Tony, I got to tell you, I took your pill too, so I got another tool.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
The Tony pill is growing. Yeah,
definitely. And I also took the, Bruce Lee's pill, be water.
Okay.
You know,
Wait,
so
Tony, is he the first admission to actually taking the Tony pill?
He might be. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Actually,
think he's
I'm the first one. I'm the first one.
Well, he's the second one. He's the first one I heard said I
Yeah.
actually took the Tony pill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And just so you know, Pat Stedman, we had Hold the Truth Hostage in here earlier, and he is I call him the only philosopher of the manosphere. And what he does on his stream is he breaks down, like, we got a new pill, and I think it's called the Holy White Pill, and that's going to be primal. We could call it the primal pill. And the reason I like what he does is because he's taking different people's thought processes and making their own metaphor for it. And he's not being closed-minded about anything. And that's one thing about, like I said, I brought up the Tony pill. I want to say it was probably a month ago. And I had said, I'm the Tony pill, because I like to adapt. When I find a truth, even at 58 years old, I can adapt to things. So we don't want to be so rock solid that we can't, I don't even like saying change your way of thinking, but understand that there are truths out there that you might not recognize. So when you recognize those, it'll change you. So it's really adapting is what it is.
Now, what color is a Tony pill? Orange? Isn't it orange?
It might be. I don't know.
I'm gonna say it's orange, but I wanted to pass that by you first before I said it was the orange.
Yeah, I'm really not sure of a color. I haven't got that far into it. Yeah.
Orange is a color of integration. It's a good color.
Yeah. So
the Tony pill is orange.
The color of the sun, I would say, since you're from Florida.
Yeah. Surfer pill. Yeah. It's tan. It's tan.
Yep. I also took the Hold the Truth Hostage gold pill. Be a global man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's right. Hey, man, you guys, like I said, credit to you guys. You guys are right about a lot of things. Yes, we can categorize it, but I think smart men learn over here.
Yeah, and I think that's important that we all learn and go for the truth, and that's why, I think the, when the black pill is mentioned in we'll say places outside of men's community, the black pill is a very nihilistic view. But what I'm seeing is that the black pill is really trying to find the truth, and it really is sometimes the cold hard truth.
Yep.
Like, I'm a big believer in attraction, and I think attraction begins at the primal level. It's physical. I don't think you can, game your way to a woman if she's not attracted to you, plain and simple. And I believe a lot of guys are selling that. I think that when you have that attraction level at first, then that's when and again, game to me is a social skills. So when you can talk to men or women, that's going to help you with your woman.
Well, Tony, there's something I just want to say there. And I know we're wrapping up soon, but you mentioned, and especially in terms of one of the primary topics you wanted to address on this, which is maintaining attraction, passion in the relationship over a long period of time. And then you mentioned right there about how a lot of what this community does is all about this attraction, this sort of primal attraction, this desire. The problem comes in is that because a lot of guys who come into it don't actually feel like they have any desire, is that it's kind of like press the button over and over again. It's the only thing that they think actually makes a difference in the relationship. And the truth is that it's always desire and comfort, the two sides of attraction, and both matter. And, I want to lead with desire, but then you need to do comfort. And anybody who learns pickup understands that sort of process of, it's really, you could say it's tension, and then it's connection, it's tension, connection. And it goes back and forth like that.
But what all I was saying is that it's at the beginning. In other words, I think attraction starts at a very basic level.
100%. And I don't think we have time to fully go into the sort of mechanics of that.
Yeah, we can do that on the next one. I would love that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that when it comes to like a relationship over the long term,
Mhm.
you have to diagnose what the actual issue in the relationship is if it's not firing on all cylinders.
Mhm.
And sometimes the issue is desire and sometimes it's comfort. If the issue is desire, then something like dread game might work, actually,
Mhm.
at least temporarily. It might try to amp it up. I look at dread game as like cardiac arrest situation. Like it's like, you know, you can use the shocks to blast somebody back, but once their heart's beating again, you don't put the shocks back on and keep doing it over and over again. Like I'll give an example. Like there's been times in the relationship where I've had to be a bit of an asshole at times, maybe a little bit more of an edge, and it's not even fully conscious. Sometimes you just find yourself automatically doing it. But that was after maybe if there was, you know, this was more in the past, but if there was not the kind of responsiveness you're looking for, but when the relationship's like good and let's say she's stressed out with something, like bring her a cup of coffee. You know, I go to the coffee shop, I bring her a cup of coffee. I mean, she's like her connection with me is way higher, and her desire to like want to have sex goes massively up as a result of that. And if you say that, if you were to say, oh, you bring your wife something to like eat or drink, that's beta. Well, it could be beta in a context. In another context, it's not. In another context, it's very important for the healthy functioning of the relationship, and it makes things a lot better. So the point of the sort of thing is, well, how do you maintain it in a long-term relationship? It really is about balance. If I've done that, give an example, if I did that for a couple of days and then there was a sort of complacency, taking it for granted, well, I'm not going to do it, right? Stop doing it for a bit, pull back, not offer as much. That would create, you know, and I'm not saying that you want to like consciously manipulate this stuff so much in the ideal. I'm just making the point that it's not a one fix all thing. You have to really pay attention.
I mean, you got to kind of know where to draw the line. I mean, I'll take this personal, is that I've actually asked somebody today, is there anything I can do for you? And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
And
What?
and I got no response, and so I left it at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's also a good topic for next time. You know, I'm kind of a hard ass. You know, in relationships before, you know, I was either the highway a lot of times, or you know, or no, or the or my way or highway, in a way. So, you know, I would say for the next discussion, I think it would also be good that how do you still be a man, keep your balls and your dignity, and still keep your wife happy, other than sex, obviously. I would say that would also be a good topic for next time, because I think I might be too much of a hard ass, and in case I change in the future, decides to go into a relationship and anything like that, that not married, but relationship, how would I deal with when would I have to, I guess, be a little softer and still keep my manhood? I'm just kind of making a wide term. I think you guys probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that was the main topic tonight, is how to keep that fire burning, relationship energy. And that's kind of what we talked about. We didn't get that deep into it, but deep enough into what you were just talking about. But
right.
Keeping that energy, again, we went full circle, because the energy is something that you're gonna feel and you're gonna know is right. So when that energy field kind of slows down, you're going to pick up on that, and that's pretty important. So
right.
The only thing you really have to understand is hypergamy. I'm just
Jesse Lee Peterson, one of my favorite guys.
Beta.
Well, I actually have a little clip here. This is one of my favorite clips from Pat Stedman on an interview we did a while ago, and I'm going to play it right now, because we'll leave out this stream on a funny note, because I had asked Pat, We'll see. You guys will see. Here we go. So what you're saying is don't send a dick pic right off the bat.
Don't send a dick pic unless your dick is huge. Don't.
So there you go. So if that helps anybody out, just if they had that question tonight, I wanted to drop that in the chat. So
What if I send a picture of an anaconda?
Yeah, as long as it's a comparison to your arm. I mean, that would be appropriate.
or at least a baby arm.
Right.
So, but yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. Let's start with Gonzo. Any last words besides hypergamy?
How old are you, brother?
Do you know who I am? Is Goofy good or bad? No, man, I'm smoking on so much that there's like smoke coming out of my ears at this point.
I agree.
This was to be expected. I think we got deep, and I appreciate the perspectives that we got tonight on all this stuff. I think as far as keeping the relationship, keeping it fresh, keeping it keeping it hot and steamy, you gotta just. I mean, I'm trying to think of a nice sage bit of advice other than hypergamy, and it's escaping me right now.
That's all right. There's a lot to take in when Pat's on here. There's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
I mean, in some of the segments when he talks, I'm processing so much information every time he speaks. So it's almost hard to have a response. And that's the beauty of having Pat on here. He makes everybody think. And that's real important in this space, is that you listen to somebody that's experienced at what he does as far as relationships go. And the way he triggers my thought process is real important. And I think that's important to everybody. And I think even in the future, the stream is going to be real important, because there's so many, just like we say, smokable topics that you have to sit back and smoke on. So let's go to Primal Man. How you doing? Let's, any last thoughts?
Just grow a beard.
Just grow a beard? Okay.
No, I mean, truly, I think to keep things fresh is the fact that you're always evolving as a man. Because the minute you go stagnant, the relationship will go stagnant. So do that. Carry your cross. Your higher purpose is calling. Obey that. That's how you keep a woman hot for you.
I'll go next. I'm going to say, guys, don't be afraid of the romance. Don't be afraid of the passion.
Yeah.
Look for that energy. And when that energy is real, I think you're going to know it. And it can be temporary, but even if it is temporary, embrace it, enjoy it, and move on. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. But don't always, I'll even add is that, again, when I said earlier that a guy without options, it's tougher on him. So when he does experience that good energy and that good connection, and it leaves, and he doesn't think that he's going to have that again, I understand that it's difficult. So, but let's go to Pat. Pat, any last words?
I mean, echoing what the two of you just said, it's like so important. I mean, I'm just gonna add in about the communication aspect, because on a high level relationship, it really is about communication. I mean, it really is about communication, but communication isn't always pretty. And getting to the point where communication is easy, relatively easy, there's a lot of things that you would not do in the beginning stages of a relationship with a girl, you would not do when you were trying to pick up a girl, that you will do differently later on in a relationship as it's evolved, to keep the connection there. And I've found that you have the fantasy aspect that comes in when you first get with a girl. And depending on how much of your own psyche the two of you have integrated the fantasy is going to be greater. The less that you have actively worked on yourself, the greater your fantasy projection onto a woman's going to be, and vice versa, right? And so the fantasy is always super hot because it's almost as if you're getting a taste of what it would be like to be whole with the other person. It's very intoxicating. But in a long-term relationship, two things happen. You have that fantasy in the beginning, ideally, right? And then it plummets. It plummets. In most relationships, it plummets. And then for a lot of people, the reason that they have bad relationships and they don't know why the passion disappeared is because they think that what made a relationship good was that fantasy. That is what they have to go back to, is the fantasy. And so what that does is the party that has the more power in the dynamic is most likely to be the one that cheats or leaves. And that's what happens to most people in bad relationships, in marriages that fall apart. But if you, rather than sort of take that, I don't know why the passion disappeared, maybe let me try this X tactic or this tactic, if what you do is try to figure out the other person and you guys really are forced to communicate, you will address what's going on. As a man, you will, this is your job as a man, and you will address what is going on in the relationship, and you will do everything on your part to lead by example, because it's not enough to just talk about it. Obviously, you have to embody it. Then the relationship, the passion will go back up, but it'll be different because you're no longer going into a fantasy projection. At that point, you are sharing communion with the other person. And that can be various levels of sort of, it can be a little kinky, but the bigger point of it is that the level of trust is super high, and that the shame correspondingly decreases. And without the shame, you can express yourself sexually, and she can express herself sexually. And that's when things start to get really good, because you no longer have to worry about it. So I would say that the communication is important, and really trying to figure out the person you're with is really important. Mm-hmm. If you want to have good sex, do the deep work, or use Dread Game, I guess, right?
I was waiting for you to say that. So, but Woody, any last comments? We're going to wrap it up.
No, I do like Pat. He's very blunt, and so I do like that. And thank you, Tony, for having the show tonight. Thank you, everybody. And I definitely like Pat. He's very blunt. I like that. I don't like people that go around the bush. You know what I mean? Yeah, very direct. And that's how I understand most of the things when people are trying to talk to me and, beating around the bush, and, it's like, this is weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to have, I'd love to have a stream one night with Pat Stedman and Scribe and MD. I think that would be very interesting.
Definitely.
I know that Primal Man is going to have MD on sometime soon. Not sure when.
Well, yeah, I just had him on too, but we'll plan him again.
Yeah, but a special show just about his. Mm-hmm. I think that would be interesting. He's a very smart guy, and having Pat Stedman and MD on the stream. I mean, who would ever thought with Michael Foster and having MD and Michael Foster on the same stream? I think a couple times, if I'm not correct. But that was very interesting, because we're getting all different points of view of the manosphere. And what I like about it is that we don't all agree on the same things, okay? But at least we can talk about it without getting pissed off, and and that's
Yep.
So, we're gonna wrap it up. Anything else, Gonzo?
I was just gonna say, because because y'all just reminded me at the end of this. But I think I'll just throw this pro life tip. I notice a lot of people are very angry in their marriages, and a lot of people take things personally in their marriages, and this is something that I've observed, but that's something that I think a lot of people maybe think of last. Like they try to think of ways to like get around the anger, but you need to address the anger up front. I think that's the thing, and I've noticed that in my relationship, the like I personally don't have any anger towards my wife, even if we get into even if we have a disagreement, even if we don't know what we're going to eat for dinner sometimes, you know how it goes. But that friction, I don't take that friction personally, and so that allows me to like deal with the situation in a way where I can we can like talk out like the disagreement or whatever. And so I think that's an important thing if you're going to, if you have an issue, a disagreement or whatever, is to just look at your own anger first. Look at what's going on there and address that. And realize that on its own could just destroy everything. So that's what I would say.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Good last words. I'm going to wrap it up. Everybody in the chat, John Boston, Joseph Blosif, Jay Neptune, appreciate all your comments. Everybody else has been in there. I just saw Caduceus jumped in here. I would love to have him on, but we're going to wrap it up. I got blood work this morning, so I got to fast for 12 hours.
Good night, guys. Good night, Tony.
See you, Woody.
Appreciate all of you. If anybody wants to stay for a quick after party, you're welcome. Pat, if you want to just hang out for a few minutes, we'll wrap it up. But I appreciate everybody. This is awesome, and we'll do it again soon. This was Thursday Night Reality Check. Peace.
Because hypergamy.
That's so funny. That's so funny.